For Shibata Kasuke, life as a 24-year-old office worker is over, replaced by a nightmare under a pale moon. A beautiful but terrifying dark elf has him pinned, her blade inches from his throat, demanding to know what a human is doing in her territory. His mind reels, trying to explain his bizarre situation, how one moment he was an ordinary guy whose only excitement came from survival games and nightly runs. And the next he was lost in an alien forest, huddled by a fire he hoped would bring salvation, not a death sentence. He makes a fatal mistake, calling her a cute girl, and is rewarded with a swift kick to the face. She snaps that he can't just address a dark elf so casually, forcing him to learn the hard way about this world's customs. She leans in close, her presence overwhelming, and asks if he's now calling her a savage. Flustered, Kasuke blurts out the honest truth. He was staring at her breasts, a confession that surprisingly earns her approval for his honesty. One moment he's at her mercy, the next he's in a desolate wasteland, the events a confusing blur as the first day of his survival begins under a strange new sky. He frantically checks his pockets, finding his phone, keys, and a wallet with a pittance of cash, clinging to the laughable hope he can just find a town and catch a taxi home. The crushing reality that he's not on Earth anymore sends him collapsing to the ground in despair. But his survival game instincts kick in, overriding the panic. The #1 priority is securing a safe shelter. He channels his inner gamer, imagining a stilt shelter, and immediately gets to work, crafting a crude but effective stone knife. Venturing into the nearby woods, he's startled by a massive insect, but soon finds a clearing with a huge tree that looks perfect for a base camp. As dusk settles, he gathers wood, leaves, and a flexible branch, skillfully constructing a bow drill to make a fire. After several failed attempts filled with muttered curses, a tiny ember finally sparks to life, and soon he's basking in the warmth of a crackling bonfire. But the comfort is short-lived as hunger and profound loneliness gnaw at him, making him wish for the cheat abilities usually granted to people isekai'd into other worlds. Just as he resigns himself to his grim fate, a strange thought crosses his mind. In a game, he'd press a key to interact with the fire. Suddenly, a holographic menu materializes from the flames. His heart pounds with hope as he experiments, thinking of keyboard commands. E makes the menu appear and disappear, while Tab brings up a full inventory screen. It's real, a literal game interface in this new world, and he erupts with joyous relief. With a crafting menu at his fingertips, he feels invincible. He quickly crafts a set of stone tools: an axe, a spear, a bow, and even a water canteen. His excitement is tempered when he tries archery and realizes his aim is pathetic. But the convenience of the inventory, which allows him to store everything without weight, is a game changer. Day 2 begins and his thirst is unbearable. He then makes another startling discovery. By thinking about movement keys like WASD, he can move with impossible agility, defying inertia entirely. He can sprint with shift and even perform a double jump with space, gracefully leaping over obstacles. His newfound confidence shatters when he stumbles upon a massive lizard-like monster lounging by a stream. He turns and runs for his life, but just as he prepares to throw his only spear, a second, even more terrifying snake creature erupts from the earth. The first beast swats him aside, breaking his spear. But in a stroke of luck, the second monster attacks the first, getting the broken spearhead lodged deep in its throat. Seizing the opening, Kasuke brings his stone axe down on the snake's head with a desperate roar. To his amazement, a loot menu appears over the corpse, allowing him to harvest its meat, leather, and bones without the gruesome task of skinning it. Realizing the pool of blood will attract more predators, he grabs what he can and flees. Back at the stream, he crafts dozens of canteens and fills them with water. At his base, he discovers the crafting menu can turn the stream water into perfectly safe, purified drinking water in plastic bottles, even multiplying the quantity. He cooks the lizard meat over the fire and finally has his first real meal, savoring the taste of chicken-like flesh and clean water, a moment of pure bliss in a world of terror. Re-energized, he crafts a shovel and digs a defensive trench around his base at an impossible speed, collecting clay and soil in the process. That night, he crafts a hammock, planning his next move to find iron ore and build a furnace. His rest is violently interrupted by a kick that sends him tumbling to the ground. The dark elf, Sylphie, has found him. After he explains his story, she uses a glowing green orb of life spirit to heal a wound on his hand. The sensation like bathing in a hot spring. She senses no magical aptitude in him, but offers to take him to her village, warning him he won't survive alone. She introduces herself as Sylphie, a guardian of the forest, and he realizes he forgot the simple courtesy of asking for her name. Their journey ends at a massive village built within the boughs of a colossal tree, where she places a collar around his neck as a requirement for entry. The welcome is anything but warm. A furious mob of demi-humans screams for his death, their eyes burning with hatred. Sylphie shoves him down an alleyway to escape the crowd, only for him to be surrounded by hulking ogres. But the true threat was Sylphie all along. With an explosion and a foot planted firmly on his chest, she activates the collar, its chain materializing in her hand as she furiously declares that he is her property, and only she is allowed to torment him. She drags him through the refugee camp on the village outskirts, explaining that these subhumans were driven from their homes by the human-led Holy Kingdom. After passing through magically tended fields, they arrive at her quaint home. Inside, she interrogates him, revealing her interest stems from a legend about lost people from other worlds. Wary of revealing his trump card, he deflects by complimenting her tan body, then demonstrates his inventory ability by making a plate vanish. However, when she sees his crudely made stone tools, she instantly deduces he has a crafting ability, smirking at his carelessness. He presents the lizard meat he hunted, and she reminds him that a slave prepares the master's meal, forcing him to bow and ask for her instruction. After dinner, he asks where to sleep, and she slyly invites him to her bed. Deciding to follow his instincts, he declares there's no need for reasons, and sweeps the blushing elf into his arms, carrying her off to the bedroom. The next morning, Kasuk is already cooking breakfast when a naked Sylphie emerges, calling him a beast for his actions the previous night. After a brief scuffle, she announces they're going hunting. As they walk through the village, the other elves stare with what he now recognizes as fear, not of him, but of her. At the gate, she warns him about a dangerous guard, then accidentally refers to him as her master, blushing furiously at her slip. On the way to the hunting grounds, Kasuk watches refugees building a wall, and contemplates using his abilities to mass-produce weapons to aid Sylphie against the Holy Kingdom. Once in the forest, he demonstrates his game-like stealth movement, much to Sylphie's bewilderment. He then stuns her by instantly felling and processing a massive tree with a single swing of his axe, the wood perfectly cut and dried inside his inventory. Having gathered enough wood, they head for the mountains to find her. But their path is blocked by a minivan-sized insect monster called a gizmo. Kasuk pales, knowing he'd be dead if he had met this thing alone. Sylphie leaps into action as the creature fires a stinger from its abdomen. Kasuk draws his bow, and with the instinct of a gamer clicking a mouse, he fires an arrow that strikes the creature's leg, crippling it. Sylphie seizes the opportunity, flashing forward in a blur of strikes that finishes the beast off. She warns him the meat is likely poisonous, and as Kasuk harvests the materials, a grim realization dawns on her. This monster is from the Omet wilderness, the place the refugees fled, and she fears the reason no refugees have arrived in 2 years is because the gizmo population has exploded, and they are now expanding their territory in search of food. Kasuk realizes just how lucky he's been to survive this long. With the first chunk of magnetic sand secured, Kasuk gets to work, his mind fixed on building a proper workbench. First, he needs a simple furnace to craft the necessary nails and chisels. His crafting ability is a true cheat, allowing him to create anything without prior knowledge, but the vise requires materials he can't make yet, so he puts it on hold. As he works, he grumbles about his master leaving him to do all the labor while she's off scouting. Finally, the simple workbench is complete. A solid block of wood that looks just like something from a video game. Accessing its menu, a vast array of new options appears, and his eyes immediately lock onto his goal, a crossbow. But crafting it requires upgrades, and suddenly, new menus pop up for both his workbench and his furnace, demanding materials he doesn't have. Something has definitely changed. He checks his inventory and discovers a new status and skills page, a leveling system that lets him spend points to acquire quantified skills. For now, he decides to save his points, unsure if he can get them back. Then he sees an achievements menu, and a hidden one has just been unlocked. To his utter horror, he's gained the first mate achievement for mating with a member of the opposite sex for the first time, granting him 10 points to endurance and stamina. He explodes in rage, furious that not only was it not his first time, but the status page is also mocking him with a technician bonus for making his partner climax. As he fumes, Sylphie returns, scolding him for letting his guard down so carelessly. He quickly shows her the new steel tools he's crafted, explaining the idea is to get gear to gather more materials. He demonstrates the steel pickaxe, shattering a boulder with a few swings and instantly converting it into neat piles of ore and gemstones, leaving Sylphie utterly baffled. She asks if it's a magic tool, unable to comprehend how it works without earth magic, but Kasuk just smirks, telling her that since he's so unique, she'd better protect him well. Later, as they eat, he notices that items in his inventory seem to be in a state of suspended time. Sylphie decides she must report these events to the village elders, but as they arrive, a pompous elven guard blocks their path. He arrogantly tells Kusuk to hold it, calling him a dirty bag, which triggers Sylphie's fury. Without a second thought, she sends the guard flying with a single punch, roaring at him to get out of her way. Inside, they meet the council of elven elders, who find it unusual for Sylphie to visit 2 days in a row. They immediately question her about the human she brought into the forest, with one elder noting he has barely a drop of magic in him. The elders discuss the threat of creatures called gizmos and the refugee situation, weighing whether to abandon the other races or let them take shelter behind their barrier. The conversation then turns personal as they tease Sylphie for mingling with the human on the very first night, joking about her warped sexual desires. The matriarch demands to know who Kusuk is, and Sylphie explains he's a merbito, someone from another world. The matriarch concludes that if he truly breached the forest without magic, he must be a merbito. Another elf tries to claim custody of him, but Sylphie fiercely embraces Kusuk, declaring that he's hers. A compromise is reached. Kusuk must prove his strength and make himself acceptable to the village by helping with the refugees. On the way out, he introduces himself as Shibata Kusuk. Sylphie explains the situation. The wall protecting the village is incomplete, and at its current pace will take 6 months to finish. Kusuk just smiles, telling her he thinks he can do something about it. He casually places his hand on the ground and, to her utter shock, begins constructing a massive wall out of thin air. A feat that should be impossible. He smirks, confident that making a wall will be a piece of cake. As Sylphie stares in disbelief at the perfectly formed brick barrier, Kusuk crafts a new rudimentary crossbow, planning to test it out. Sylphie examines it, noting its advantages. It's easy to aim and doesn't require constant strength to hold the bowstring drawn, making it perfect for the refugees. She deems it too weak against a gizmo, so Kusuk hands her a stronger version reinforced with animal bones. She takes aim at a captured gizmo torso and fires, the bolt piercing its tough carapace with ease. Impressed, Kusuk decides he needs a proper workshop, and right before Sylphie's eyes, he lays a foundation, erects walls, and installs a roof, finishing the entire building in less than an hour. Inside their new castle, Sylphie suddenly gets close, whispering that he may be her slave, but she is his wife, and it's a wife's duty to support her husband. Over dinner, they plan the village's defense, realizing they'll need 500 crossbows. The biggest hurdle is the animal bones, until Sylphie suggests using the gizmo shells as a substitute, a brilliant idea. Kusuk then asks about her past, and she hesitantly confesses that she is the heiress to the Marinard royal family, a wandering princess trying to save her people. He asks if she was planning to use him, and she admits it. But Kusuk doesn't mind, telling her he owes her his life anyway, a kindness that brings tears to her eyes as she embraces him. The next morning, they head for the refugee camp, ready to put their plan into action. They are greeted by a host of beastmen who call Sylphie Your Highness, led by a stern minotaur named Ponin. Sylphie orders him to gather the principals. Kusuk feels a bit intimidated, but promises Sylphie he won't abandon her, and she promises the same. They summon food and firewood from his inventory, providing a feast for the starving refugees. Inside the main tent, Sylphie addresses the refugee leaders, explaining the elves' ultimatum. She then introduces Kusuk, but he interrupts, boldly declaring that he is her slave, her master, and her husband, because she has already given him her chastity. Shocking everyone into silence, the leaders erupt in outrage at the thought of a human marrying elven royalty. Sylphie calms them, explaining Kusuk is a merbito with strange powers she can vouch for. The Minotaur commander Danon scoffs but agrees to believe in the princess for now, warning Kusuk he will personally kill him if he betrays them. One by one, the others introduce themselves: Melty, a sheepwoman and minister; Ira, a quiet Cyclops court mage; Incubi, a confident foxgirl. To demonstrate his power, Kusuk leads them to the unfinished barrier. With a swing of his pickaxe, he deconstructs part of the wall, then rebuilds it in seconds, extending it far beyond what they had built in weeks. The refugees are left speechless. Danon and Qubai test the wall, finding it impossibly sturdy. They are finally convinced of his power, but Ira is deeply unsettled, muttering about how his abilities defy logic and the principles of mass. She grills him about his inventory, unable to comprehend how it works. During lunch, Kusuk tries gizmo meat for the first time, and proceeds to shatter Ira's worldview by explaining his world has no magic at all. She calls his very existence absurd. Seeing them getting along, a jealous Sylphie playfully kicks Kusuk. Their next task is gathering wood, and once again, Kusuk's power defies all reason as he fells a tree and instantly processes it into perfect, dried timber. The others can only stare, realizing their fates truly rest in the hands of this impossibly powerful man. While they work, Ira watches him intently, her mind racing. She tells him his power is so absurd it's making her lose her temper and she's going to dissect him now. Kusuk screams for Sylphie to save him, but Ira just smiles, saying she wouldn't dissect him while he's still alive, a threat that terrifies him even more. As night falls over the dark elf village, Kasuk walks with Sylphie, feeling the weight of the day's exhaustion. She hands him some freshly baked bread, a small gesture of kindness from the villagers, but he wonders if it's truly a sign of acceptance or just a reward for his usefulness. Sylphie cuts through his doubts, bluntly asking if he really expects everyone to get along with him so easily. He admits he doesn't know, and she speculates on the thoughts of the village leaders. Melty values his utility, Ira is interested in his abilities, and Danon, while honest, is still an unknown. Kasuk reflects on their first encounter, how they nearly killed him, and decides that for now, he'll treat them as a group of reliable but untrustworthy people. He agrees to produce crossbows for the village, but leaves the difficult decision of who to arm up to her. Back at his workshop, he immediately gets to work, preparing for the next day's projects by crafting charcoal to fuel the bricks. Inside, he uses his crafting menu to queue up a massive amount of iron ingots and mechanical parts, marveling at the convenience of his power. Sylphie watches, intrigued, as he decides to use some materials to upgrade his simple furnace. With a tap on the menu, the furnace erupts in a blinding flash of light, transforming into a full-fledged smithing facility complete with a domed oven, anvil, and bellows, so large it punches a hole through the wall of his workshop. He sees new options available, including weapons like battle axes and halberds. Sylphie asks if he could make a large axe for Danon, and Kasuk settles on a bardach, a heavy weapon perfect for a man of Danon's stature. He also notices a repair function for military-grade equipment. Just then, Sylphie tells him to follow her, leading him to a storage shed filled with a horrific stench. Inside is a mountain of blood-soaked, broken armor and weapons, spoils of war she couldn't be bothered to clean. Kasuk, disgusted but practical, decides to simply store everything in his inventory, only to discover that the gear's all cursed. Sylphie is unfazed, suggesting he just clean and repair them, but when he tries, a red warning flashes on the repair screen, confirming the curse. He recoils, deciding not to touch the cursed items for now, and instead focuses on finishing Danon's weapon. He presents the massive bardach to Sylphie, who is impressed by its craftsmanship but finds it far too heavy for her to wield. She comments that in Danon's hands, the weapon's reputation for cutting a man in half might just become a reality. Kasuk suggests a similar would suit her better, and she immediately gets close, asking him to make one and requesting a leather strap to upgrade her gear, blushing as he gets flustered. Seeing her expression, he realizes what she's truly after, and she tells him to stop for the day and rest, her intentions clear. The sun rises on a new day, and Sylphie is positively beaming. She greets the villagers ready for the day's work and asks Kasuk for the weapons he repaired. He pulls a massive pile of brand new looking swords, spears, and shields from his inventory, which Sylphie orders Danon to distribute among the fighters to bolster their defenses. She then presents Danon with his custom-made bardach. He hefts the mighty weapon, feeling its perfect balance and immense power, astonished that Kasuk could create such a masterpiece. Though Danon still finds the boy's abilities insane, Sylphie smirks, telling him he's about to witness just how insane they truly are. Kasuk clears some space, and in front of the bewildered crowd, instantly materializes the entire smithing facility and a row of furnaces, leaving the villagers completely speechless. He lays out his plan for the day. He'll gather clay and bake bricks while Sylphie and the others can bring him any worn-out blades for repair. He begins collecting clay with a shovel, making it vanish into his inventory. When Ira and Milty arrive, he brings out a new item, a workbench, and warns Ira not to look as it's going to get bright. Another flash of light later, the simple workbench has been upgraded to an advanced, metal-topped version with a treadle. Ira, who peeked through her fingers, is on her knees, crying. She realizes the light is akin to the sacred magic of priests, confirming her hypothesis that Kasuk is a being from another world, a divine miracle. He casually confirms her theory, sending her into a state of shock that lasts until lunchtime. Over a meal of sandwiches, Ira quietly approaches Sylphie, stating she has a simple way to prove Kasuk isn't from this world, and it involves his slave collar. Kasuk is confused, but Kyubei is horrified, shouting that a slave's collar will tighten and kill the wearer if they try to remove it themselves. Ira calmly explains that the collar works on magic, and since Kasuk has none, it's nothing more than a tough necklace to him. Sylphie, suddenly embarrassed, orders him to take off his clothes instead of the collar. a command that sends Kasuke into a momentary panic until he realizes her master's commands have no real effect on him. With a bit of effort, he pulls the collar right over his head, shocking everyone at the table. Now that the plan is set, Sylphie decides they'll hold a demonstration after he finishes building the village wall. Danon later pulls Kasuke aside, asking why he doesn't use his freedom to harm the princess. Kasuke replies simply that he has no reason to, as she's the one who's been protecting and feeding him. With Danon at his side, Kasuke begins his grandest project yet, constructing a massive wall around the entire village and finishing it with a large gate, completing the entire fortification in just a few hours. He expresses some concern that the walls might not be high enough, remembering how high the small gizmos could jump. But Danon assures him the larger, more dangerous variants hunt by charging, not jumping. With the defenses complete, Sylphie gathers the entire populace for the demonstration, standing on the wall before the massive crowd. She uses magic to amplify her voice, announcing that their new defenses were built in a single day thanks to the power of one man, Kasuke, a merbido brought from another world. She explains that while every living thing in their world possesses magical energy, Kasuke has absolutely zero. As proof, she calls attention to his slave collar, an item impossible for anyone but the master to remove. On cue, Kasuke pulls the collar off once more, holding it up for the stunned crowd to see. To prove it's a genuine slave collar, Sylphie offers it to anyone who wants to test it. 3 volunteers are chosen, and once the collar is on, they are instantly forced to their knees by Sylphie's command. When they try to place it back on Kasuke and issue the same command, he flatly refuses, declaring that he has already chosen his master, Sylphie, the one who saved him. With the demonstration a resounding success, she declares Kasuke an honored guest and a vital ally, asking everyone to accept him. The crowd, their doubts erased, erupts into thunderous applause, with the refugees finally united behind him. Kasuke knows the real work is about to begin, preparing their countermeasures against the Gizmo horde. In a makeshift war tent, the new alliance gathers to discuss their plans against the monstrous Gizmo. Kasuke scans the new faces, a mix of hardened warriors from different backgrounds. Jaghira, a fierce cat-like scout from the royal army, introduces herself alongside Pilna from the same group. A powerful wolfman named Wurg, formerly a captain of the guards, stands with them, as does Jurda, a bear-like woman from the heavy infantry. At Sylphie's request, Kasuke reveals his latest invention, a rack of deadly crossbows. The group stares in awe, none of them having ever seen such a weapon before. Kasuke steps forward to demonstrate, effortlessly drawing the string, loading a bolt, and taking aim at a suit of armor. With a sharp crack, the bolt slams into the metal, proving its power and ease of use. The warriors clamor for a turn, with Jaghira snatching one up first. She immediately recognizes its potential as a concealable and powerful weapon for a scout, though she worries about the maintenance costs. Everyone agrees it's a potent and simple weapon to use, with Jaghira estimating its effective range at 50 meters. When asked how many he can produce, Kasuke consults his mental inventory and confirms he can craft about 300 with his current metal supply. Sylphie declares it more than enough, ordering him to create 300 crossbows and a staggering 5,000 bolts for their forces. Kasuke hands over his current stock of 202 bolts, and Jaghira eagerly takes a crossbow to test its limits in the field. Others are given weapons for durability trials, and Kasuke feels the weight of their expectations settling heavily on his shoulders. With their war preparations underway, Sylphie announces it's time to meet with the elf elders, stating that since they upheld their end of the bargain by building the wall, the elves must now fulfill theirs. They arrive at the colossal treehouse of the elven elders, where one of the elders expresses disbelief that they actually constructed a massive wall overnight. Sylphie cuts straight to the point, reminding her of their promise, and the elder agrees to dispatch 20 of their elite spirit archers. Kasuke is skeptical, but Sylphie explains that a single spirit archer, whose arrows explode on impact, is worth 10 regular soldiers, leaving Kasuke thoroughly impressed with the magical firepower of this world. As they depart, the elder teases Sylphie about having children with Kasuke soon, causing the dark elf to blush furiously, drag him away in embarrassment. Their escape is cut short by an arrogant elf named Nate, who calls Sylphie a tainted one. But before he can finish his insult, Sylphie delivers a brutal punch that sends him flying, warning him to keep his mouth shut. She calmly walks away, having let off some steam. Kasuke, curious about the deep-seated grudge, listens as Sylphie recounts a painful story from 5 years ago. To save thousands of refugees, she stole spirit stones, and the elf village sent an army after her, which included Nate's parents. Consumed by rage, her skin turned dark as she embraced a forbidden power. transforming into a warrior of darkness. In that battle, she slaughtered 3,000 soldiers, and Nate's parents were among the casualties, forever branding her a killer in the eyes of her people. She sadly confesses that her body was once fair and slender. But Kosuk immediately dismisses her past, telling her she's cute just as she is now, his simple words touching her deeply. On the 7th day, Kosuk awakens and retrieves an improved, metal-reinforced crossbow from his crafting menu. The new mechanism is much easier to load, and a test shot proves its superior speed and power. Realizing its high iron cost, he decides it should be reserved for the strongest fighters. He then discovers a new pharmacy tab, unlocking recipes for a brewing stand and various glassware. Deciding to optimize his combat style, he invests points into skills like marksman and strong circulation. His morning takes a surprising turn when he accidentally walks in on Sylphie bathing, causing her to flee in a flustered panic, a reaction Kosuk finds utterly charming. He can't help but fantasize about their night together, feeling that Sylphie is simply fantastic. Over breakfast, they agree to mine for more iron, and Jaghira, giddy with excitement, grabs the new crossbow and sprints off to hunt. Hilna explains that Jaghira's poor archery skills make the crossbow a perfect fit for her. Before asking Kosuk if he can craft bombs for her. At the quarry, Kosuk astounds the girls by instantly crafting a staircase out of wooden blocks to reach the top of the cliff. Then proceeds to mine his way down, carving a massive chunk out of the landscape. His casual display of reality-bending power leaves them speechless. While Ira gathers herbs, Kosuk's mining session yields a massive haul, including a small amount of legendary mithril. The discovery sends Ira into a frenzy, and Sylphie urgently warns him of the ore's immense value. Overwhelmed by scientific curiosity, Ira clutches a piece of mithril like a precious jewel. Just as they regroup, a scout reports that the Gizmo have entered the forest. Ira eagerly uses the herbs with the new brewing stand, and Kosuk is stunned to see recipes for gunpowder appear in his crafting menu, one of which he suspects is for advanced smokeless powder. He quickly crafts a variety of potions, but their generic names baffle Ira's logical mind. A cure disease potion that cures all diseases. The concept is so absurd it nearly breaks her. When Kosuk can offer no explanation, she simply demands he hand over everything he made, and walks off in a daze, clutching the basket of reality-defying concoctions. While the troops train with the new crossbows, Sylphie finds Kosuk operating a spinning wheel and loom he crafted. He explains the need for cloth for bandages, and she suggests a trip to the warehouse for new clothes and to check on Ira. At the warehouse, Kosuk picks out some leather, glue, strong alcohol, and a new outfit, which he tries on. While Sylphie is unimpressed, the quartermaster helps adjust it, and he deems it comfortable enough. Outside, a dejected Ira is waiting for them. She reports that the potions work flawlessly, but so quickly that they are impossible to evaluate by normal means. Suddenly, she breaks down in tears, apologizing profusely. Sylphie comforts her, explaining later that Ira's genius mind felt utterly dwarfed by Kosuk's ability to create such miraculous items so effortlessly, leading to a crisis of confidence. Melty reminds them all that Kosuk's power came at the ultimate price, the loss of his entire world. Kosuk reassures them, framing their situation as a win-win partnership. To seal their renewed understanding, he introduces Ira to a handshake, a gesture of reconciliation from his world that quickly spreads to the others. That night, Sylphie promises that she will always protect him, no matter what. And he decides to prepare for the Gizmo hunt, though her suggestive invitation to bed hints at other preparations. On the 8th day, the hunt begins. As they patrol the forest, a beastman's ears twitch, and he suddenly halts the group. He shouts a warning that the Gizmo are approaching fast. And from the dense woods erupts a monstrous insectoid creature, its roar echoing through the trees as it charges them. Sylphie charges through the forest, ordering her team to keep the monstrous Gizmo busy while she attacks from behind. Kosuk calmly takes aim with his crossbow, targeting a weak spot on the creature's back. And a moment later, a bolt from his companion finds its mark, enraging the beast. It spots them instantly, its fury palpable. But as it lunges forward, Kosuk reveals a smirk of pure confidence. He knows it's dangerous, but he has a plan, just as the Gizmo is about to crush them. He claps his hands and a solid brick wall materializes from thin air, stopping the creature dead in its tracks. He lets out a breath of relief, while his companions stare, disgusted by the splattered bug but impressed by the result. Kosuk casually explains that his usual wood spikes wouldn't have worked on this particular monster, showing them a sample of his more primitive traps. He was planning on using them for their walls, but this situation called for something sturdier. With one problem solved, he moves on to the next, luring another Gizmo with a well-aimed rock. before trapping it with yet another summoned wolf. Sylphie can only watch in awe, remarking that hunting has never been this simple or safe. The ease of it all gets Kusuk thinking bigger, brainstorming plans for trenches and crossbow defenses, which sparks a truly absurd idea, a floating bait. To test his theory, he performs a quick experiment, stacking crafted blocks in midair. He tests the wall's integrity, it's perfectly stable. He even leaps onto the floating structure, finding it solid as the ground beneath him. He grins, his mind racing with possibilities for an aerial fortress, completely oblivious to the worn-out expressions of his comrades. Sylphie admits she's trying not to be surprised by every impossible thing he does, but it's not easy. Just as they process this latest miracle, the forest erupts with the chittering roars of an entire swarm of gizmos heading their way. The hunt is far from over, a new wave of monsters charges them, at least for this time. Nina the Lamia bravely draws their attention, telling her companion to run, while she dodges their furious assault. Sylphie directs the counterattack, telling Kusuk and Kyubai to simply get the monsters' attention. They fire their crossbows in perfect sync, peppering two of the beasts and pulling them away from the main group. With the creatures distracted, Sylphie flashes forward like a silver blur, cleaving one in two with a single, elegant slash. Meanwhile, Kusuk spots another gizmo bearing down on the Lamia princess, and instantly puts himself in its path, summoning another brick wall just in time to intercept the charge. The beast is trapped, helpless against the sudden obstacle. Kusuk slings the crossbow over his shoulder with a smug look, knowing he can just store the creatures in his inventory without even needing to kill them. With the immediate threat handled, they check for injuries and find one of the lizard folk with a gruesome open fracture. This is the perfect chance for Kusuk to test his new Ira-approved potions. He washes the wound and pulls out a splint he crafted earlier. A system prompt appears, and before anyone can object, his hands move on their own, snapping the bone back into place and securing the splint with unnatural precision. The healing bar fills in an instant, and the splint shatters as the leg is made whole again. The lizard girl stands up, completely healed and overcome with gratitude, thanking him for saving her from amputation. With the hunt concluded, the group retreats to the village for now. Back at their makeshift camp, the horned warrior Danon reports on the inefficiency of their hunting parties, noting their lack of firepower. He stands to reorganize the teams, but winces in pain, dragging an injured leg. Kusuk immediately offers to help, but Danon scoffs at the offered splint, accusing him of mockery. Unfazed, Kusuk applies the splint, and once again the miraculous healing light envelops the limb, mending it completely. Danon is left speechless, flexing his perfectly restored leg in disbelief. He calls it a fairy trick before running off to tell the others. Realizing the potential, Kusuk decides to heal everyone. A line of the injured quickly forms, and the Cyclops girl Ira watches his every move, fascinated. When a rabbit person needs help with a badly healed knee, Ira tries to assist but only makes it worse. Kusuk steps in once more, and his system-assisted healing re-breaks and sets the bone perfectly, curing the chronic pain in seconds. The rabbit hops for joy, and Ira stares with her single, wide eye, seeing Kusuk's power as an everlasting flame. Later, over a meal, the group discusses just how absurd Kusuk's abilities truly are. Sylphie is worried about future hunts without him, so Kusuk proposes a plan to bolster their defenses. His grand solution is simple: torches. His companions are underwhelmed, until he demonstrates by placing the torches on tall stone pillars around the camp's perimeter, creating a wide, illuminated safe zone. With their new untoppable torches in place, the entire area is bathed in light. Kyubai points out that the flames never seem to die down, and Kusuk explains with a grin that they are, in fact, everlasting. As they admire their handiwork, he glances at the sky and feels a chill. He asks if the moon seems red to them. Sylphie sees nothing unusual, but Ira agrees. A knot of dread forms in Kusuk's stomach as he explains the grim meaning behind the phenomenon in his world. A red moon is a harbinger of a massive enemy raid. As if on cue, a deep rumbling shakes the ground, and from the darkened woods, an endless sea of glowing red eyes emerges. The true battle is about to begin. Under the pale moonlight, the fortress walls are swarmed by insectoid monsters, but the defenders are ready. A barrage of crossbow bolts rains down, piercing the creatures' carapaces with deadly efficiency. From the ramparts, Kusuk watches the relentless assault, a confident smirk on his face as he notes how easily they are overwhelming the enemy with sheer numbers. A fox-like demi-human beside him eagerly agrees, loving the thrill of the hunt and itching to shoot some more. With 200 crossbows firing in volleys, each wave takes down about 20 of the creatures, turning the battlefield into a graveyard of twitching limbs. Kasuk observes the reloading process, noting that the demi-humans are strong enough to reload in about 10-15 seconds, but he still contemplates making upgraded crossbows for them. The commander roars for the defenders not to let the enemy get any closer. The volley fire continues, but soon a sheep-horned woman calls out that they need more bolts. Kasuk, ever prepared, simply taps his crafting menu and produces a massive pile of 5,000 bolts, telling her to take as many as she needs. The fox girl is practically drooling over the endless supply of ammo he's provided for her. She wonders how long the meat from the slain gizmo will last before it spoils, and the sheep girl estimates about half a day. Kasuk realizes he'll have to go out and collect the corpses himself, wading through the sea of monsters to do so. He casually suggests that if they gather a few people skilled at fighting, it should be no problem. He finds the village chief and proposes his plan, to use his mysterious abilities to instantly collect the corpses before they rot. The chief agrees, ordering a wolfman named Wurg to assemble a close-range combat squad. A cheerful bear girl named Gerda volunteers to join, but Kasuk notes her longsword looks like it would snap in two if she used her full strength. Gerda admits he's right and tells him she used to wield a tower shield and a long mace when she served the kingdom. Hearing this, Kasuk tells her to wait right there. He's going to make her something real quick. He heads to his furnace, pondering where he can find a long mace. It's not in his standard menu, but he figures he can just will it into existence, and sure enough, the recipe pops up. He crafts the mace and a heavy tower shield for her, deciding to make a spiked mace for himself while he's at it. Soon, he returns and presents Gerda with her new weapon and shield. She swings the mace, feeling its perfect weight, and is confident she can smash the gizmo with it. Kasuk offers another mace to the elf princess, Sylphie, who tests it with a powerful swing, noting its excellent balance. The chief then introduces Kasuk to the rest of the collection squad. A massive red ogre named Sumel, a lion man called Sir Leonard the Dual Swords, and his lizard woman mentor, a spear instructor. Kasuk can't quite read the lizard woman's expression, but Sir Leonard seems grateful for the healing Kasuk provided him earlier. The final member is Ira, a petite but imposing court magician. With the team assembled, they prepare to open the gate and charge into the fray. As the warriors prepare for the onslaught, Kasuk's companions comment on his strange abilities, noting he doesn't seem to use magic at all. Kasuk can hear them but keeps his focus, even as he feels the lizard woman's intense stare, practically begging him for a new weapon of her own. He feels the piercing gazes of the whole party, all of them armed with battered, rusted, or otherwise inadequate weapons. He finally relents, telling them to start thinking about what they want while he gets permission from Sylphie. Suddenly, a terrifying shriek pierces the air, signaling the approach of more monsters. The elite warriors are unfazed, striding forward with confidence. Sylphie reminds Kasuk to ignore titles and focus on the mission. The moment the battle begins, the team becomes a whirlwind of destruction. The chief splits a gizmo in two. Gerda smashes one with a mighty swing of her new mace. Sir Leonard slashes through another with his dual blades, and the lizard woman skewers a monster with precision. Sumel warns them to watch out from below, before bringing her massive log club down, smashing a gizmo into a useless paste. Then Ira steps forward, unleashing a devastating, fulminate thunderstorm spell that fries a whole group of enemies in an instant. Kasuk is completely awestruck, realizing this is the first time he's ever seen real destruction magic. He feels a bit inadequate, complaining to Sylphie that everyone here is far more interesting than him, as he can't crush monsters or electrocute them. Sylphie simply chides him, telling him that if he has time to think about such things, he should be working instead. After the battle, the team celebrates their haul of 216 gizmo corpses, enough food for over 100 days. The warriors are overjoyed, but their thoughts quickly turn back to their failing equipment. One by one, they begin requesting new gear from Kasuk. Ira presents him with a diagram for a staff she wants. Sir Leonard asks for a bladed weapon that can both slash and strike, and Sylphie quietly requests the scimitar he once mentioned. Remembering his promise, Kasuk decides to use his precious mithril ore to craft a special weapon for her. On the 9th day of survival, a scout reports the gizmo threat has vanished for now. The warriors gleefully test out the crude but effective new weapons Kasuk made for them. But then he unveils his masterpiece for Sylphie, a magnificent mithril blade that took him 6 hours to craft. The entire group is stunned by its splendor. She names it Pale Moon, and Ira declares it a future royal heirloom. Sylphie tests the blade on a gizmo corpse, slicing clean through its tough armor with a single, effortless swing. Back in his tent, Kasuk checks his status and sees he's reached level 12. He scrolls through his achievements, unlocking stat boosts and new abilities, but stops cold when he sees one called Womanizer, which gives him an attack boost against the opposite sex. Shaking off the confusion, he discovers another achievement, Survivor, which unlocks skill level ups. That night, he and Sylphie discuss reinforcing the walls, anticipating another attack in a week. She tells him that as his master, she expects his first thoughts to be of her, and she won't tolerate him mentioning other women. With a mischievous smile, she swoops him into her arms, declaring it's time to teach him a lesson. The days fly by, reaching the 15th day of survival. On the newly built walls under a gentle moon, Sylphie stands with Kasuk. He asks him what he's going to do now. He wants to help her take back her kingdom, but the odds seem impossible against a whole army. But Kasuk is an optimist, believing there's no limit to what they can achieve. His unwavering confidence steals her resolve. She turns to him, her eyes blazing with determination, and declares that she will take the kingdom of Marinard back. With hands on her hips and unwavering resolve, Sylphie makes a stunning declaration to the assembled council. She is planning to reclaim the Melinard Empire. The entire room erupts in shock, unable to process her ambition. Ira calmly cuts through the noise, stating that while she supports Sylphie, they must first address the immense logistical challenges such a campaign would require. Meanwhile, far out in the desolate Omit wilderness, Kasuk and the forward unit are hard at work. Their mission is to measure the distance they travel before sundown, leaving behind towering landmarks as they go. After a grueling 10-day journey, they've placed 8 markers, the forest they left now a distant memory on the horizon. A map reveals their steady march from the elven village across the vast wasteland. The trek does little to dampen the greed of Leonard and Zamel, who immediately start begging Kasuk for mithril weapons, revealing the real reason they tagged along. Their whining's cut short by a deafening bang. It's Jeghira testing out the new bolt-action rifle with a triumphant cry of bullseye. Kasuk warns her not to waste precious ammunition, but the sheer noise of the weapon leaves everyone else covering their ears. Sylphie, however, is deeply impressed, noting its incredible power took down a massive gizmo spider in just 2 shots. Now it's time to build their new home. After a quick scan of the area, they decide on a defensible hill with a prominent pointy rock to build their fort. As the team prepares their camp for the night, Kasuk gets to work. A system notification announces he's unlocked a new skill, Fast Place Selection Build Mode. Walls materialize from thin air at an impossible speed, stunning his companions who can only watch as a complete building erects itself in moments. But Kasuk is just getting started. He lays out the foundation for a massive protective wall, one that even their combined earth magic couldn't hope to match in pace. He digs a deep trench to prevent underground attacks, adds bastions to each corner, and finishes it all off with a sturdy front gate. The sheer scale of the completed fortress leaves his party speechless. Their awe quickly turns to playful teasing, and their praise feels like pressure to the flustered Kasuk. He panics and tries to make a run for it, but in his haste, he traps himself atop one of his own newly created pillars. Leonard and Zamel see their chance, calling out that they won't eat him and he should come down. Kasuk, cornered, retorts that he is Sylphie's slave and can't hand out mithril weapons without her permission. Just then, a new voice joins the fray. Pilna the harpy swoops in, offering to rescue him. But her help comes with a price. She wants a weapon of her own, revealing she's just as opportunistic as the others. Before Kasuk can despair, Sylphie arrives like a savior, immediately demanding to know what her subordinates are up to. Leonard and Zamel waste no time, pleading their case directly to her. Sylphie shuts them down cold, explaining that she cannot simply give away national treasures, especially not based on their flimsy reasoning. However, she proposes a deal. She knows Kasuk is from another world and isn't bound by their values. In exchange for Kasuk making them personalized weapons, they will become his personal bodyguards, sworn to protect him even at the cost of their own lives. They eagerly accept the terms, much to Ira's visible disappointment. Kasuk then turns to Pilna, telling her he has the perfect weapon for a harpy. He presents her with a small, club-like object. Unimpressed, she asks how she's supposed to use it, so Kasuk decides a demonstration is in order. He brings her to the wall and explains the weapon is a hand grenade, then casually tosses it over the side. A colossal explosion rocks the very foundation of the fort, leaving the entire party stunned into silence. They immediately grasp its potential, imagining harpies dropping these high-power explosives from the sky. Kasuk carefully warns Pilna that once the pin is pulled, there's no stopping the explosion. Undeterred, she eagerly straps the device to her leg and takes flight. Soaring high above, she pulls the pin, then performs a masterful dive bombing, swooping down to release her payload. The resulting blast is even more devastating than the first, obliterating the practice targets below. She lands with a triumphant shout, incredibly proud of her successful test run. Everyone praises her amazing performance, and Kasuke gives her a thumbs up. Sylphie falls into deep thought, contemplating the new dimensions of warfare these weapons introduce. The day's excitement leaves everyone exhausted and hungry, with Jaghira collapsing dramatically from starvation. As the sun finally sets over their new fortress, Kasuke serves up dinner, hamburger. The group devours the strange but delicious meal, amazed by his crafting abilities that extend even to food. After their meal, Kasuke lays out the itinerary. He tasks Jaghira with a durability test, handing her 500 rounds of ammunition and telling her to fire until the gun breaks. She accepts the mission with manic glee, ready to start shooting immediately. Next, he gives Pilna a crate of dummy grenades, asking her to see how many she can carry for resupply missions. While they're busy with their tasks, Kasuke continues his one-man construction project. He erects row after row of residential buildings, leaving Sylphie to marvel that his abilities never cease to amaze her. He proudly declares that the 20 new buildings can house 320 people comfortably. Just as they're admiring his work, he remembers a crucial detail: toilets. Brushing off their confusion, he explains the importance of hygiene in preventing disease, and quickly constructs a simple but effective latrine with a septic tank. Next on the list is a water source. Sylphie uses spirit magic to create a breathable pocket of air around Kasuke, allowing him to dig deep into the earth. He finds the work pleasant in the cool breeze, and quickly strikes water. With their teamwork, they finish creating 4 wells for the fort. Sylphie explains that the land is a wasteland because the spiritual balance was destroyed by overuse of spirit stones, a story told by the village elders. This gives Kasuke another idea, a farm. He uses special farmland blocks he acquired from the Black Forest, boasting that the soil is so rich, crops could be harvestable in just 3 days. He begins hoeing and planting seeds with an almost manic glee that bewilders his companions. Before their very eyes, the seeds instantly sprout. Now for the water, he places a small 4x4 cobblestone basin and pours in 2 buckets of water, which magically transforms into an infinite, self-replenishing pool. Sylphie and Leonard can only stare in utter confusion, unable to comprehend what just happened. As Kasuke gathers buckets to water the field, Sylphie's mind reels, certain her eyes are playing tricks on her. The infinite water source simply defies all logic. Internally, Kasuke sweats, realizing he just created a feature from a game and has no logical way to explain it. Just then, Jaghira returns from her mission, reporting that she fired all 500 rounds with no loss in accuracy. She hands back the rifle and receives a new one, just as Pilna points out the wheat field, which has already grown to a shocking height. Kasuke then presents Pilna with a custom rig to carry multiple grenades, a bundle weighing about 6 kilograms, which she finds perfectly manageable. Sylphie approves the design as their standard aerial bomb moving forward. With the base operational, Sylphie outlines their strategy. Leonard and Zamel will lead scouting parties with the Beastkin, while she stays behind to guard Kasuke. As the teams head out, Kasuke returns to his workshop, his mind already focused on his next project. He pulls up the crafting menu for the Harpy Airbomb V1. Sylphie approaches, her expression filled with concern, and asks if he's truly alright with making all these weapons. She worries about the burden it's placing on him, especially since she was the one who asked for his help. Kasuke looks at his hands, fully aware of the consequences. He admits the weapons will cause immense loss of life for the Holy Kingdom, and that he sees it as his responsibility to carry the weight of those deaths. He concludes grimly that he will probably be going to hell. He explains the concept of hell and its ruler, Enmasama, from his world. Sylphie finds the idea of an afterlife of torture terrifying, explaining that in her world, the souls of the dead are believed to become stars. She then looks him dead in the eye and makes a vow: if he is going to hell, then she will go to hell together with him. She was the one who requested the weapons, so she refuses to let him carry the grave sin alone, believing that a burden shared is a burden halved. Her fierce loyalty makes Kasuke smile. They both agree that their goal isn't to wipe out the enemy, but to reclaim their kingdom, and killing is just a means to that end. They solidify their plan, build a fort, hold a defensive line, and use Harpy airstrikes and crossbows to wear down the attackers. Kasuke then unveils more of his deadly inventory, including a tripwire-activated anti-personnel mine, and a massive bundle of TNT capable of a huge explosion. He darkly jokes they could let the enemy capture the fort, then just detonate it from a distance. Sylphie playfully chides him for his morbid thoughts before asking if he can improve the bolt-action rifle. Kasuke's expression turns serious as he confirms he can, but what he has in mind is a completely different kind of gun. Sylphie is stunned to see that Kasuk has crafted not one but 4 different firearms, a revolver, a semi-automatic pistol, and 2 types of shotguns. She asks if she can hold them, picking up the revolver and noting how surprisingly heavy the iron weapon is. Kasuk explains that it's a close-range weapon that fires 6 powerful lead bullets, potent enough to kill in a single shot. He then presents the semi-automatic pistol, which fires 8 rounds in quick succession. Sylphie is skeptical, wondering how useful a pistol would be in a melee, but Kasuk describes modern combat tactics from his world, using submachine guns and pistols in close quarters. She brushes it off, saying such situations are rare here. Moving on, she picks up the pump-action shotgun as Kasuk explains the differences between it and the double-barrel version. Noting that shotguns fire multiple smaller projectiles at once, he tells her it's mainly for clearing buildings or for hunting. With the small arms demonstration over, Kasuk leads her to the larger defenses on the wall. Starting with a giant crossbow he calls a ballista. After showing her how to load the spear-sized bolt and pull the lever, Sylphie takes the shot. The bolt smashes into a distant rock with devastating force, leaving her impressed by its sheer firepower. Next, Kasuk unveils a cannon, explaining it's a swivel gun made entirely of iron, making it much more powerful but also very expensive to produce. He briefly hesitates, pondering the consequences of introducing such destructive technology into a world of magic, before deciding to give it a test shot anyway. The resulting explosion is deafening, carving a massive crater out of the landscape. Sylphie remarks that it works like a giant shotgun, and Kasuk concludes that for now, the ballista is the most practical weapon they can use right away. Seeing a newfound spark in her eye, Kasuk teases her about wanting a gun, joking that he'd love to see her dressed as a cowgirl. The loud boom of the cannon draws the attention of their comrades, who come running to see what happened. They are all in awe of the weapons, convinced that with this kind of power, no one will dare oppose them. However, the lion warrior scoffs, claiming these weapons lack the honor of a true warrior, and challenges Kasuk to a duel, confident he can cut down every bullet. Kasuk accepts, casually remarking he'll just patch him up with a band-aid if he gets hurt. As Kasuk fires, the lion man moves with blinding speed, effortlessly deflecting the bullets with his sword. His companions explain that their superior physical abilities allow them to predict the bullet's trajectory simply by watching Kasuk's eyes and the barrel of the gun. This revelation sends a chill down Kasuk's spine. He realizes he's made a grave miscalculation, wondering if even a faster bolt-action rifle would be enough. A serious discussion ensues, with Kasuk voicing his deep concern over what would happen if these weapons fell into the hands of the Holy Kingdom. Lost in thought, he begins muttering to himself, seeking a way to reclaim the kingdom that doesn't rely on pure, destructive force. Just then, his train of thought is broken by a shout from below. He looks down to see a vast field of wheat that has miraculously grown to full maturity, its golden stalks ready for harvest. The yield is enormous. And as he stares at the bountiful crop, a brilliant idea sparks in his mind. Later, at a meeting in their newly constructed outpost, which already houses 300 people, Sylphie addresses the demi-human refugees. She announces that thanks to Kasuk's powers, they can now achieve self-sufficiency. But her true goal, she declares with grim determination, is to retake the Melanard kingdom as soon as possible, to free their friends and family from bondage. She acknowledges their current weakness and small numbers. Proposing a new strategy, they will build up their strength within the wilderness, while Kasuk infiltrates the kingdom to liberate more of their people, swelling their ranks. Kasuk confirms his role, explaining he will create sustainable farms and bases for them in the wilderness, with the weapons serving as a deterrent against the inevitable retaliation from the Holy Kingdom. Sylphie outlines a 3-base strategy: a main base of operations, a supply base connected to the elf village, and a frontline vanguard stronghold, which will be a 5-day march from the enemy kingdom. When questioned about the logistics of moving liberated people through the dangerous wilderness, she confidently states that Kasuk can create underground shelters to ensure their safe passage. When asked about the farms, she cleverly redirects the question to Kasuk himself. He presents them with the fruits of his labor, massive bales of wheat harvested from a 1,000 square meter plot. Melty is dumbfounded, realizing he harvested all of this in less than 3 days, a fact that contorts her face with sheer disbelief. Kasuk nervously explains he just planted and watered the seeds, and that's why they need to test it. Examining the grains, Melty is further astonished by their uniform size and high quality. She realizes the implications of Kasuk's power, muttering with a dark grin that if he can do this, he'll be working the fields for eternity. Meanwhile, the young alchemist Ira stares with dead, empty eyes. completely demoralized that Kasuk's cheat ability produces better crops with simple water than her most advanced alchemy ever could. With the plan set, one of the warriors clarifies they will be using guerrilla tactics, infiltration, and sabotage, rather than open warfare. Their path is clear: tame the wilderness, free their people, and gather the strength to take back their home. The crowd erupts in a unified cheer. Kasuk knows their race against time has begun. 3 days later, a party of 50 sets out. After reaching the first base and spending another 3 days expanding the farms, a small scouting party of 6 ventures deeper into the wilderness. After half a day's travel, Kasuk announces it's time to build camp. At Sylphie's playful command to get to work, Kasuk constructs an entire base in a blur of motion, complete with sturdy houses, defensive walls, and even a water tower. His companions can only watch in awe, remarking that his skill would shatter the pride of any craftsman. The crowning achievement is a fully functional bathhouse. After several more days of scouting, they find a perfect location for their main base. But Sylvie senses something is amiss. Ira uses her magic to investigate, detecting an ancient ward against demons deep underground. The others recall a strange night in that very area when monsters refused to attack. A night when Ira had conveniently collapsed from magical exhaustion. Ira explains it's a relic from the old Omit kingdom, still functioning after 300 years. Realizing the danger if the device were to fail, Sylphie decisively orders them to take control of it. Ira pinpoints the exact location, and Kasuk begins to dig. He soon hits a solid ceiling, breaking through to reveal a hidden underground ruin. At its center is the glowing warding device, guarded by 2 imposing stone golems. Ira explains the golems are powered by magic stones and perceive intruders by sight. A grin spreads across Kasuk's face. He has an idea. Instead of fighting, he calmly walks toward a golem and, using his crafting ability, simply builds a wall of stone blocks around it, trapping it completely. He then plucks the magic stone from his chest, deactivating it. His friends can only stare, dumbfounded by his utterly pragmatic and unfair solution. They commend his cleverness, seizing control of the ancient device without a fight. As night falls, Kasuk works late in his workshop, designing a base for 3,000 people. But beneath his focus lies a deep-seated frustration. With all the work and Sylphie sleeping on the front lines, he hasn't been intimate with her in 10 long days. Suddenly, Sylphie herself appears, startling him. She confesses that she's been feeling just as lonely and missed him dearly. With the base construction underway, Melty's cries of overwork echo across the plains as Kasuk finds himself in a hopeless foot race against the beastmen. He doesn't even last 5 seconds before he's tackled to the ground, a harsh reminder of their fearsome physical superiority. Back in the planning tent, Kasuk calmly lays out his ambitious project, not just barracks but proper homes for up to 3,000 people. He shocks everyone by insisting on humane working conditions, dictating strict 8-hour workdays with absolutely no overtime and 2 full break days. Sylphie can't believe her ears, asking if he's being serious, to which Kasuk confidently replies that he's never lied before. Knowing his demands are steep, Kasuk smirks, stating that there must be some kind of reward for all this work. Melty immediately deflects, saying the princess will handle it, and Sylphie, feeling the pressure, declares she will give Kasuk anything she can. A wicked glint flashes in Kasuk's eyes as he seizes upon her words. He heard her say anything, and a sly grin spreads across his face as he contemplates the possibilities. His companions realize he's masterfully trapped the princess in her own promise. Getting ambitious, Kasuk wonders what he could possibly ask for. Sylphie, flustered but determined, grits her teeth and tells him she won't say it twice. Kasuk learns that Melty is not just a vassal but the princess's childhood friend and milk sister, explaining their close bond. Before he can scheme further, Melty grabs him and drags him towards the farmland, explaining that with his plowing skills, they can harvest in a mere 3 days. While Kasuk is put to work, Sylphie addresses the assembled citizens, rallying them for the grueling task ahead and turning this place into their new home. The result of their labor is a magnificent new city, a testament to Kasuk's incredible power. With his blueprint function, he registered the entire fort wall, and using symmetry mode, conjured the entire base into existence in a single, breathtaking moment that left everyone speechless. Proudly looking over his creation, he declares the frontline base complete. Over a meal of burgers, Kasuk outlines the next phase of defense, planning to install 116 ballistas and dig a moat filled with spikes. With the base secured, Sylphie announces it's time for the Liberation Unit to make its move into the Marinard Kingdom. And the soldiers roar with approval, ready for battle. Later that night, Kasuk sits with the other men as an alchemist named Sykes recounts a scary encounter in a dark alley. The conversation turns to how the women of the base have been approaching all of them, but Kusuk is completely oblivious, having never been asked out himself. They all call him dense, explaining it's because everyone knows Sylphie, Melty, Ira, and even the harpies have their eyes on him. Kusuk is skeptical, but the men tell him to accept his fate, as his status as a legendary merbido makes him a prize despite being a slave, especially with the current shortage of men. Though he admits a harem sounds nice, he insists he's fine with just Sylphie. The topic shifts to the underground shelter, which Kusuk confirms is fully stocked with food and munitions, offering them one of his specially made ration bars, which they all agree is delicious. Just then Ira appears at the door, excitedly telling him she's finished the design for the magic stone engine and is confident it will work. As she pulls him away, Kusuk resigns himself to his cozy predicament, realizing he'll have to enjoy this complex web of female advances for now. The day of the operation arrives, and Sylphie gives a rousing speech to the departing troops. As the gates open, Melty argues that Kusuk's abilities could turn the tide of war, but Sylphie firmly refuses, declaring his safety her absolute highest priority. Ira reminds him his job is to protect everyone by creating better tools from the rear. Accepting his role, Kusuk heads to the workshop, ready to craft. Inside, he's presented with a prototype lever-action crossbow, and he immediately gets an idea to combine it with golem technology for automated reloading. Sykes suggests integrating magic technology, like a thermal magic tool he once made. Sparking a creative storm, the workshop team, inspired by Kusuk's unique perspective, decides on a plan and gets to work with renewed vigor. Their creation is a masterpiece, a golem-loading ballista that automatically pulls the string and loads bolts when the user supplies magic. As they celebrate their success, a harpy scout named Front swoops in with an urgent report, announcing the imminent arrival of a liberation unit with 57 rescued civilians. The next day, Kusuk dons a doctor's coat, ready to treat the incoming wounded. But as the refugees arrive, they panic at the sight of a human, screaming for his death and throwing the plaza into chaos. While Kusuk deals with the pandemonium, the unit leader reports to Sylphie on the grim situation in the human kingdom, where beastmen are enslaved in mines and forced to convert to a religion of human supremacy. Back outside, Kusuk explains to a concerned Sylphie that he managed to calm the crowd after treating the first patient. Sylphie tells him his real work is just beginning, as she has 2 new requests from the frontline troops. The workshop gathers to hear the new tasks, a way to cook warm meals without fire and a tool for long-distance communication. Kusuk remembers a method from his world using quicklime to generate heat. And for communication, he suggests a version of Morse code using magic waves, similar to the base's monster-repelling barrier. The team agrees it's possible with golem tech and eagerly sets to work. The next day, as the refugees are sent to the main base, Sylphie expresses concern over the lack of men among them, a problem Kusuk wryly notes. Alone in her office, Sylphie playfully asks if any other women caught his eye, a hint of jealousy in her voice. Kusuk honestly admits they were pretty, but reassures her that she is, and always will be, his number one. Overcome with embarrassment, Sylphie blushes furiously, stammering that she isn't ladylike or cute. He marvels at how cute she is, but she refuses to be seen in public. Kusuk immediately calls for Melty, who appears and wholeheartedly agrees that the outfit suits Sylphie perfectly. Later, Kusuk sheepishly admits to Melty that he went too far, as Sylphie has now locked herself in her room. He then concocts a new plan. He'll make even more cute outfits, and he and Melty can wear them to make the princess jealous enough to come out. Melty denies that would work, but she can't hide her own interest when Kusuk asks if she just wants to wear the dresses herself. In a bustling courtyard, Kusuk is a whirlwind of activity, his crafting skills on full display at a sewing machine. A crowd of girls eagerly awaits their new outfits, a project that feels slightly off to Melty and Tade. Kusuk works tirelessly, handing out custom-made clothes to the excited women, who soon surround him, showing off their new attire ranging from belly dancer outfits to school uniforms. Tade slyly suggests he look out the office window where Sylphie is peeking, trying to get a better view. Kusuk teases Tade about her own interest, but she just suggests a sexier outfit might get Sylphie to join in. The plan seems to be working, as groups of girls now changed into matching idol-like costumes cheer him on. One by one, they show off their new clothes, but Kusuk's true target appears at last. He tells a very reluctant Sylphie that he has a mountain of clothes for her to try on. She sees right through his plan, accusing him of orchestrating the whole thing. Tade chimes in, insisting a beauty like Sylphie should dress up, and pushes her into a changing tent despite her protests that it's outrageous for a leader to indulge in such things. The commotion draws the attention of Danon, who wanders over to see what all the fuss is about. He arrives just in time to see Sylphie emerge, mortified and flustered in a revealing virgin-killing sweater, much to the shock of everyone present. She frantically tries to insist it's all a misunderstanding. The chaotic fashion show ends with Kusuk, Tada, and a still flustered Sylphie kneeling in apology before Danon, though he admits he can't scold them since morale was clearly raised. The moment of levity is shattered when Melty bursts in with an urgent report. Pilna has returned. The group's expressions turn serious as Pilna reports on her mission. She announces that the attack on the Vinsk rock salt mine was a success, liberating around 800 people. The problem, she explains, is that the liberated forces are now leading this massive group through the wilderness with limited supplies. Their numbers are growing as they liberate villages along the way, and they're expected to arrive at the nearest shelter in a week. Realizing the urgency, Sylphie devises a plan. They will start retrieving supplies from the main base, leaving only a minimum at their current location. Kusuk and Sylphie will head to the nearest shelter to prepare for the refugees' arrival. Danon agrees, sending a message to the main base and mobilizing Pilna and 5 other harpies to relay the plans to the liberation unit. With the plan set, Kusuk and Sylphie dash across the barren landscape, harpies flying overhead. A harpy reports 2 gizmo monsters ahead, but Kusuk, declaring they don't have time to deal with them, swiftly dispatches the creatures with his rifle. As dusk approaches, they reach an underground sky shelter for the night. Kusuk declares that all that's left is a bath, food, and sleep. A simple statement that seems to surprise Sylphie and the harpies. Inside the shelter, the girls enjoy a much-needed bath in a large pool. Afterwards, Kusuk is examining a beautiful feather he found when one of the harpies shyly tells him it's hers. He explains he just thought it looked cool, which causes the other harpies to react with blushing embarrassment. Sylphie explains his casual admiration is akin to a stranger picking up a strand of her hair and calling it beautiful, leaving Kusuk to ponder if he did something wrong. The harpy, however, is pleased by his sincerity and asks him to treasure it. This prompts the other harpies to eagerly offer him their feathers as well, turning him into an accidental collector. He laughs, explaining it reminds him of his childhood treasure chest, while the harpies look on in what appears to be agony. He sits up, greeted by the harpies, feeling surprisingly refreshed despite the previous day's fatigue. He notices the harpy's skin seems to be glowing. And more importantly, Sylphie is pointedly avoiding his gaze, making him wonder what's going on. After a quick breakfast, they set off, arriving at their destination before noon. Kusuk wastes no time. After a quick survey, he confirms it's a good spot to build a fort. With his crafting power, he erects barracks, storage for food and water, and even an underground escape route rigged with TNT. In a flash, a massive fortress wall surrounds the new base, leaving the harpies speechless. He then creates a field and sows seeds that will be ready for harvest in just 3 days, securing their food supply. Sylphie can only shake her head, telling him his ability never ceases to amaze her. That night, however, Kusuk feels something is wrong. He's been sleeping far too deeply lately, waking up the next morning without any fatigue for the first time since coming to this world. He realizes he's been having erotic dreams and feels unusually refreshed, connecting it to the harpies sleeping nearby. He greets them at the window, noticing they look exceptionally well. His gaze then falls on Sylphie, who still refuses to meet his eyes as she eats her breakfast. He resolves to ask her about it later, but his thoughts are interrupted by an urgent report from a harpy messenger. The rearguard has departed from the 4th shelter, but more importantly, the liberated people are being pursued by the Holy Kingdom's cavalry, and Lord Lionel is requesting aerial support. With a determined look, Sylphie declares it's time to use that, and Kusuk readily agrees. The harpy messengers are sent off to rest as Kusuk and Sylphie prepare. Elsewhere, Lord Lionel and his forces are in a desperate situation, pinned down by a constant barrage of arrows. Their formation has been stretched thin, and they lack the troops to cover their flanks from an approaching cavalry force. Just as panic sets in, their salvation arrives from the sky. The harpy squad swoops in, dropping bombs they've been trained to use, which explode amidst the enemy cavalry, creating chaos and fire. Back at the fort, Sylphie reminds one of the departing harpies to prioritize her own safety. As they fly off, Kusuk watches, admitting that he's nervous. This is his first real war, a far cry from fighting monsters. Sylphie tells him grimly that there's no difference, they are all lives. Kusuk feels a profound unease, his mind wandering to his new, exciting life and the strange dreams he's been having. He knows his mind isn't in the right state. Sensing his turmoil, Sylphie suddenly embraces him from behind, telling him not to push himself. She reassures him that he's already helping them enough and that no one expects him to stain his hands with blood. Her words steady him. Looking out at the horizon where a line of people is now visible, Kusuk finds his resolve. He accepts that the weapons he made are being used in a war and that he has a responsibility to see it through. He tells her he will do everything he can to end this war. Sylvie thanks him, a soft smile on her face. The liberated people arrive safely, linking up with the rear unit before noon. Accommodating everyone takes until nightfall, during which time the leaders discuss their next move. After 5 days, the entire column arrives at the frontline base. They are greeted as heroes, the returning forces buzzing with news of their victory against the kingdom's army. The Harpies are particularly proud, calling themselves toilet birds who drop more than just filth now. Danon congratulates Kusuk on the successful expansion of the shelter, which can now hold up to 1,000 people. After telling Danon he needs to return to the port tomorrow, Melty pulls on his sleeve, insisting there's something she wants him to see at the workshop. Intrigued, Kusuk follows her. Inside, she tells him to feast his eyes on 2 girls wearing strange steampunk-style backpacks. He asks what the hell they are, and she proudly presents them as prototype golem communication devices. Kusuk wakes with a groan, a strange weight pressing against him in the early morning light. His memory flashes back to the workshop, where Ira proudly showed off her new golem communication device. Everyone was in awe of her genius, praising her incredible invention. Their work was interrupted by a kind woman from the Lamia tribe offering them some leftover bread. Right before Ira unveiled her other brilliant creations, a portable cooking fire, a pot shield, and a quicklime pouch for cooking on the go. They worked late into the night, and he remembers deciding to crash at the workshop to save time. The memory is shattered when the Lamia woman peeks in to wake him, her eyes landing on the compromising scene of him and the barely dressed Ira in bed together. A little girl gasps and Kusuk leaps up, frantically trying to explain that it's all a huge misunderstanding. Once they're gone, he turns to Ira, demanding to know why she was in his bed with almost nothing on. Ira calmly explains that her blanket was thin and she got cold, so she figured it would be warmer to sleep with him. Kusuk silently panics, thinking she's far too bold and that men are dangerous beasts who can't be trusted in these situations. But then she looks at him with her large, earnest eye, confessing that his power and ideas constantly inspire her, and that's why she always wants to be with him. Her directness leaves him completely flustered. She quickly clarifies that she knows about his relationship with Sylvie and has no intention of getting between them. She just wants permission to stay by his side. Kusuk, still baffled by the customs of this world, stammers that maybe they could start as friends. When Ira asks if this means he's accepting her, he quickly rephrases, suggesting a relationship that's more than friends but not quite a girlfriend. Proposing they take things slowly, which she readily agrees to. Internally, Kusuk is already trying to establish a hierarchy with Sylvie as number 1, but as Ira gets dressed, a new dread sets in. How in the world is he going to explain this to Sylvie? Later at breakfast, Pilna nearly chokes when Ira calmly announces that Kusuk has accepted her. The harpy feels completely left behind, watching in disbelief as Ira casually wipes a crumb from Kusuk's lips. Pilna complains that she got beaten up while the others got friendly with Kusuk, just as Danon approaches. He asks if Kusuk plans to return to the shelter alone, and Kusuk admits he'd prefer an escort. Pilna immediately volunteers, arguing that a group of harpies could provide excellent aerial support. Danon finds this reasonable and tasks her with finding 5 harpies to accompany him. Ira shoots Pilna a chilling glare, warning her with just her eye to try no funny business. Danon tells Kusuk to restrain himself, making him feel like his chastity is some kind of public commodity, before cryptically warning him to prepare for the worst, mentioning a rumor about a widow making moves on him. Upon his return to the front lines, Kusuk is greeted by a jubilant Sylvie, who tackles him in a hug with such force he goes flying, crashing painfully into some crates. After confirming he's not seriously injured, he tries out the new communicator to contact Ira. But there's no signal. He realizes the magical waves can't reach this far, as the device's range is limited to about a 4-day journey. The others immediately grasp the strategic value of long-range communication, especially for coordinating attacks with Harpy scouts. And Sylvie declares that this single invention could fundamentally change the nature of war. Just then, a scout swoops in with terrible news. A massive enemy army is approaching and will arrive before sunset. Their forces number staggering 5,500. Kusuk realizes their plan to dig an escape tunnel is useless. They'll be attacked before they can finish. But Sylvie grins, reminding him of the little surprise he rigged up. The entire shelter is wired with explosives. Kusuk confirms he planted TNT all over the fort, enough to cause a chain reaction that will obliterate everything. The new plan is simple: evacuate to a secret watchtower he prepared, lure the enemy inside with supplies, and then blow the whole thing sky high. The evacuation is nearly complete, and their new hideout is well stocked and has a perfect view of the fort. Sylphie tasks Pilna and 2 other harpies with detonation duty, and the excited girls crowd around Kusuk before being shooed away. From their new location, the communicator works perfectly, and Kusuk relays the situation to a shocked Danon and Ira. The other beastmen are amazed by the technology and immediately start demanding their own units. Later that night, Kusuk sits with Sylphie, recounting the events of his trip. He tells her about Ira's confession, and she asks if he gave her an answer. Kusuk professes his unwavering love for Sylphie, explaining how he'd be consumed by jealousy if she were with another man. Sylphie laughs, telling him that in their world, it's a man's duty to provide for many wives, and a husband who can't is a disgrace. She gives her blessing, saying she has no problem with Ira and even encourages him to have a baby with her. Just as she playfully pins him down, a deafening explosion rips through the night. They rush outside to see a massive fireball where the fort used to be. The harpies had waited until the fort was filled with enemy soldiers, before pushing the plunger, detonating the explosives with perfect timing. The blast is so immense that Kusuk and Sylphie feel the vibrations from miles away. Sylphie decides against a follow-up attack, planning to move out at daybreak. Kusuk checks his game-like interface and is horrified by the achievements he's unlocked, not just lewd ones like Philanderer, but also Genocider, Death Creator, and Explosion Monster for killing over 10,000 living beings in one go. He grimly tells a shocked Sylphie that 3,000 people just died in that blast. He then struggles to explain the bizarre concept of his powers, where every action, especially killing, grants him experience points and new skills. The others speculate he might be an apostle for a god of chaos. Soon after, Pilna's team returns with a full report. The explosion was a massive success, leaving less than 20% of the enemy soldiers mobile. To make matters worse for the invaders, giant ant monsters called sismas swarmed out of the ground after midnight and devoured the survivors, completely annihilating the army. With the threat neutralized, Kusuk speaks to Ira on the communicator. When Sylphie asks if he feels pain for killing so many, he admits it hasn't sunk in yet. Ira's promise to pamper him when he returns earns him a jealous glare from Sylphie, and Kusuk, caught between them, suggests that Sylphie could pamper him too. To his surprise, she agrees, pulling his head into her lap and calling him her baby. The next day, Danon lectures Kusuk for putting a burden on the princess, but Kusuk refuses to explain what happened to protect Sylphie's pride. In truth, Sylphie had gotten so into the pampering that she became overly demanding and then short-circuited from embarrassment. When she finally emerges, she gathers the women for a secret talk before declaring Kusuk innocent, which only confuses the men more. The mounting embarrassment becomes too much, and Sylphie finally snaps, going completely berserk and drawing her sword. The group flees in terror, spending the rest of the day being chased across the landscape by their rampaging princess. Kusuk returns to a hero's welcome, greeted by the smiling faces of his comrades who have been waiting for him. The team gathers for a meeting, but Kusuk immediately notices the princess is absent. He asks about Sykes and is told the monkey man is sleeping soundly after being given some medicine, completely exhausted from his ordeal. Over tea, the group discusses the communication device, brainstorming ways to power it for those who can't use magic. Kusuk reassures them that improving it will be simple. Once he registers a blueprint, he can mass-produce anything with his crafting skill, keeping their secrets safe. Curious, he asks what the girls have been working on, and they proudly show him their incredible progress, developing magic guns, mass-producing magic swords, and crystallizing magic from underground veins. One of them presents a prototype of a magic rifle, explaining they'd switched to a muzzle-loading design due to power issues and combined fire and wind magic for the discharge mechanism. Kusuk is genuinely amazed they could develop such a complex weapon on their own. Ira then explains her work on the magic swords, which is being conducted at the frontier base. With military preparations going smoothly, Kusuk decides to pivot to a new culinary project, announcing he wants to make miso and soy sauce. His declaration is met with a sea of blank, confused faces. He pulls up his crafting menu, but as he suspected, the recipes aren't listed, only the raw ingredients. Undeterred, he gets to work in the kitchen with massive new tools. And though he can't make his primary goal yet, he produces 2 new items, kinako and soy milk. He realizes the issue isn't his cooking space, but a missing component for fermentation. A quick search of his crafting list reveals exactly what he needs: special barrels for brewing, which he creates in an instant. With a confident grin, he declares that he can now make the ultimate all-purpose seasonings from his world. The mention of brewing and fermentation sparks a different kind of excitement, and Ira asks if this means he can also make alcohol. Kusuk checks his menu and confirms it's possible, much to the delight of the entire room. The excitement quickly snowballs into a full-blown demand for booze, and before he knows it, Kusuk is dragged to the plaza to become a one-man brewery. In an absurdly short time, he produces barrel after barrel of fresh ale. The moment the first tap is opened, the plaza erupts into a massive party. Kusuk pours endless mugs as everyone celebrates, and the first taste is a resounding success. Even Princess Sylphie and Leonard, who arrive to see what the commotion is about, are impressed, with Leonard declaring Kusuk's ale is far superior to the cheap swill from the city's taverns. With the princess's blessing, the celebration goes into full swing. A joyous, drunken revelry that the beast folk haven't experienced in a long time. The party gets wilder and a flustered Kusuk tries to fend off a very drunk Sylphie who demands he drink with her. Ira is amazed by his skill, noting that she can tell the fermentation is perfectly uniform in every barrel just by looking. Kusuk, not a strong drinker himself, feels the chaos escalating and worries about getting forced to drink. Just then Danon appears, and seeing Sylphie is completely plastered, he simply offers Kusuk a mug and the two share a drink, vowing to work hard tomorrow. The next day, the plaza is a graveyard of hungover bodies and empty barrels. Kusuk is in his workshop, having finished crafting a beautiful mithril dagger, when Ira quietly enters, saying she came for a talk with the princess. Sylphie, however, is passed out cold from the previous night's festivities. Ira decides to pamper a confused Kusuk while they wait, climbing onto his lap and stroking his hair. The tender moment is shattered when Sylphie appears, wrapped only in a towel, her presence immediately filling the room with a heavy, dangerous tension. Kusuk freezes in terror as the two women begin a chilling negotiation over how to divide him, with Sylphie claiming his right half and Ira his left. They then debate who gets him during the day and who gets him at night. Later, an exhausted Kusuk is carried into a war council by Ira, unable to move his legs. Danon calls the meeting to order, proposing a radical change of plans, a proactive, all-out assault to retake the three enemy forts. He argues that their initial plan of a slow buildup is no longer necessary. Their forces have swelled to 4 times their original number. And with Kusuk's weapons, the enemy's defenses are obsolete. Sylphie's face darkens as she realizes the plan requires Kusuk on the front lines, and her voice drips with ice as she asks Danon if he truly thinks she would permit that. Her murderous intent is so intense Kusuk feels a chill down his spine, but Danon holds his ground, insisting it is necessary. Leonard agrees, warning that they must strike before the Holy Kingdom can develop countermeasures. Ira calmly explains that creating effective defenses against Kusuk's aerial bombing would take years, but magic barriers could stop their crossbows. Sylphie finally relents, but with a non-negotiable condition: if Kusuk goes, she goes with him. She coolly states that their survival chances increase dramatically if they protect each other, daring Danon to imply she was weak. With the plan settled, everyone moves with urgency. Kusuk spends the next 4 days in a whirlwind of production, before the main reinforcements arrive. That night he returns to his room, only to find it filled with harpies. Sylphie bluntly informs him they want to have special relations before heading to a battle they might not survive. The harpies explain that for them, dying alongside their enemies is a blessing. The awkwardness continues at dinner, where Kusuk is served a traditional harpy porridge, only to learn it was made from their unfertilized eggs. Just as things couldn't get stranger, the final reinforcements arrive, led by the bubbly government official, Melty. She immediately tries to adopt a mommy role with Kusuk, which earns her the instant animosity of Sylphie and Ira, forcing Kusuk to deflect her obvious advances. The next morning the army marches out, leaving the non-combatants and a plea for more ale behind. In a single day they construct a new temporary fort, unnervingly close to the enemy. Setting their sights on the easternmost fortress, under the moonlit sky, their forces move into position. Using the communicators, Kusuk confirms all squads are ready. As the sun rises, the order is given to advance. Inside the enemy fort, the commander is thrown into chaos as a massive force attacks from the south, their crossbows firing from an impossible range. He connects the attack to the previous explosion, but is cut short by a report of another assault from the north. This is the signal. Kusuk gives the green light and the Harpy squadron takes to the sky. They identify the commander in the courtyard and shift their targets to the barracks and command center, dropping their payload. The fort is rocked by a massive explosion, as fleeing messengers are cut down by hidden beastmen. After a second bombing run on the south gate, the Harpies return triumphant. The battle is won before noon, but the sight of the carnage is too much for Kusuk, who doubles over and gets sick. He confesses the stench and the gore are far worse than he ever imagined. A search confirms only 20 survivors in an intact warehouse, while 4 messengers were intercepted and eliminated. With the fort secured, the Liberation Army's flag is raised to the cheers of the victorious soldiers. Sylphie addresses her troops, congratulating them on a flawless, casualty-free victory. But she reminds them their fight is not over, declaring their next target is the Western Fortress. With their forces bolstered, Kusuk's Liberation Army marches west from the central fort, leaving a contingent of crossbowmen and mages behind to hold their ground. The vast open grasslands are a surprising sight, but their trek is soon interrupted by Harpy scouts swooping in with a report. A merchant convoy is heading their way and it doesn't belong to the Holy Kingdom. Kusuk immediately orders a halt to discuss their options. A debate sparks. One warrior argues against attacking as they don't need supplies, but another fears the merchants will report their movements. The clever Melty steps in, suggesting a more diplomatic approach, reminding them that alienating an influential local merchant could complicate their rule later on. With Sylphie's approval, Melty takes charge of the negotiations, a confident smile playing on her lips as she orders her troops to surround and capture the caravan. The merchant, a man named Miguel, is stopped in his tracks by the imposing group. His eyes widening at the sight of an elf and a beastman, Sylphie introduces herself as the Witch of the Black Forest, but before another word can be exchanged, their soldiers emerge from the hills, completely surrounding the merchants. Sylphie calmly informs them they are not thieves, but a liberation army dedicated to freeing all races from the Holy Kingdom's oppressive rule. Seated at a hastily prepared table, Melty takes over the negotiation, offering a pouch of exquisite jewels crafted by Black Forest elves as payment for their goods. The merchant seems unimpressed by the small offering, but Melty's deceptively sweet smile sends a shiver down his spine. A move Kusuk instantly recognizes as blatant blackmail. Defeated, the merchant asks where they should take the cargo. Melty points to the western fort on a map. Much to the merchant's shock, he had no idea it had already fallen. Melty playfully chides him, telling him such outdated information is a disqualifying trait for a merchant, before sealing the deal with a charming smile that leaves the poor man flustered and utterly compliant. While the diplomatic negotiations took place, the main force assaulted the fortress. Enemy arrows rained down, only to be effortlessly deflected by the mages' magical shields. With the enemy's ranged attacks neutralized, Sylphie declares it's their turn. To showcase their overwhelming power, they launch a full frontal assault in broad daylight, spearheaded by the Harpy squad raining down fire from above. The fort is quickly engulfed in flames as the ground troops rush in. The merchant watches the carnage with a pale face, and Melty coolly asks if the sight was stimulating, reminding him that their enemy is the Holy Kingdom's military, not civilians like him. The battle inside is fierce. One of their own reports 2 casualties against a highly skilled knight. Elsewhere, a lizardman warrior carves through the enemy soldiers with brutal efficiency. As the fighting subsides, Sylphie orders a sweep of the area to root out any remaining hostiles. That night, the victory is tainted by sorrow as they prepare a funeral for their fallen comrades. The first casualties of their war, the bodies are placed on pyres and the princess herself sets them ablaze in a solemn warrior's ritual. Kusuk learns this is a Marinard Kingdom tradition, purifying the dead with fire to send them to the heavens. To honor the fallen, Sylphie declares a feast, and the army eats and drinks through the night, mourning their dead and toasting to their new journey among the stars. Their campaign continues with ruthless efficiency, moving on to the eastern fortress, which is rocked by a massive aerial bombing. The Harpy squad celebrates a successful run, but Kusuk suddenly orders them to abort any follow-up attacks. White flags of surrender are being waved from the fortress walls. The enemy has given up without a real fight, intimidated by the swift destruction of the previous fort. The garrison of 269 soldiers is disarmed and imprisoned. As predicted, the two are at odds. Danon wants to consolidate their power, while Melty argues for a swift strike on the city of Erichburg using their new volunteers. Kusuk and Ira examine a map identifying Erichburg as a critical transportation hub whose capture would cripple the Holy Kingdom's southern forces. Their strategic planning is interrupted when Sylphie bursts in, flustered to find Kusuk surrounded by girls but unable to hide her own desire to be near him. 7 days later in Erichburg, the Holy Kingdom's leaders are in chaos, unable to comprehend the reports of a devil from hell wiping out their forts. An archbishop rages at his subordinates, refusing to believe 5,000 soldiers were defeated by escaped demi-humans. His fury is interrupted by a new report. The Witch of the Black Forest has taken another town, Mitterstown. Meanwhile, Sylphie addresses the citizens of Mazewood, offering liberation and promising mercy to those who lay down their arms. The enemy commander scoffs at her offer and readies his archers, unaware of the beast-folk musketeers taking aim from a distance. A single shot obliterates the commander's head, followed by a volley that decimates his officers. A lone harpy bombs the front gate, and Sylphie gives the terrified soldiers 30 seconds to surrender. Her advisors discuss strategy, agreeing that Kusuk's unique abilities are too valuable to risk on the front lines, a decision Sylphie silently supports as she thinks of her beloved. Back at the central fortress, Kusuk's quiet life is shattered by a surprise goblin attack. Before he can even react, Ira unleashes devastating lightning magic, incinerating the creatures in an instant. Kusuk is stunned by her power as she casually explains she's a former Imperial Court mage who could likely handle 50 soldiers by herself. With the immediate threat gone, they turn their attention back to development. Kusuk's magical mithril shovel has allowed them to rapidly clear land for farming. And they've even constructed a temporary fort to protect the farmers and their harvest. The jarring ride of their carriages is the next problem to solve. Kusuk uses his crafting ability to design an enhanced carriage with a proper suspension system. After creating it in a brilliant flash of light, a test ride proves it to be a massive success. Just as he proposes upgrading their entire fleet, a report comes in. Mazewood has refused to surrender. The order is given to commence the attack. Watching from the comfort of his new carriage, a wave of unease washes over Kusuk. He confides in Ira that he can't stand staying sheltered in the back while others fight and die for him. It just doesn't sit right with him. 2 days later, after the successful liberation of Arichburg, he and Sylphie stand together, looking out over the conquered city under the quiet night sky. As dawn breaks, Kusuk and his companions travel by carriage towards the front lines, the assault on Arlichburg already underway according to the radio. The group discusses the Liberation Army's chances, confident that the harpies and crossbows give them a significant edge. Kobai casually asks what they are all doing sneaking out in a carriage, but is immediately shot down when it's revealed the entire supply run is just an excuse for Kusuk to see the princess sooner. Leaving him blushing and flustered, Kobai switches topics, asking where Kusuk was during the fort capture, and Kusuk explains he was busy gathering intelligence and allies. Using old connections from his time in the capital, he agrees to escort them as far as Arlichburg, ready to step in if they run into trouble. Meanwhile, the battle for the city rages. The Liberation Army unleashes a massive volley of arrows, which are effortlessly blocked by the city's magical barriers. Mages on the walls augment the anti-magic defenses, but the Tiger mages have already been deployed, neutralizing the arrow fire on both sides. The defenders are desperate, knowing that losing this position would sever their southern forces. Their leader, the dark elf Princess Sylphie, refuses to pull back, ordering her troops to advance and begin a harpy bombardment of the gates. Inside the city, the commander, Sir Mizzle, receives updates on the stalemate. He notes the enemy's small numbers and suspects they have a trick up their sleeve. A suspicion confirmed when lookouts spot harpies diving towards the northern and southern gates. A massive explosion rocks the city as the harpies drop their payload, completely obliterating the main gates in a fiery blast. Mizzle stares in horror, realizing the reports of the gates of hell being opened were all too real. With the gates breached, he orders his men to form up and face the invaders, while his panicked archbishop demands an immediate evacuation. As the archbishop flees, he declares Mizzle responsible for the disaster, leaving the commander to face the enemy alone. The legendary Witch of the Black Forest, Sylphie, strides into the city square. Mizzle orders his guards to stand back but is suddenly struck down by a projectile from a strange weapon in her hand. His loyal subordinate charges in a rage, thinking he's found her blind spot, only to be gunned down in an instant. With their commander dead, Sylphie offers the remaining soldiers a choice: surrender or die. The acting commander tearfully yields, and in the blink of an eye, the flag of the Marinard Kingdom is raised over the city. Just as the battle concludes, Kusuk's carriage arrives, rolling through the ruined gates. Sylphie rushes to greet him, leaping into his arms with a cry of his name. Kusuk, fearing for his safety, instinctively dodges her embrace, which only earns him a scolding for not trusting his Wanshan. The entire group erupts in laughter at Sylphie's declaration. Later, Ira tries to get Kusuk to call her Wanshan too, using her tears and cute lingerie as leverage. The scene his companions unfortunately over. The next day, a haggard Kusuk emerges, complaining that he was forced to turn a grindstone all night. While exploring the city with Kobai, he contemplates a visit to a brothel but decides against it, admitting he spends most of his free time researching and crafting new items. He decides to finally organize his massive inventory and finds a vacant lot to lay everything out. With a few gestures, Kusuk unloads a staggering amount of raw materials, leaving Kobai speechless at the sheer volume. They walk through his personal armory filled with building blocks, powerful cannons, and other dangerous weapons. Kobai notes that Kusuk needs all these ingredients since he can't create things from nothing. Then, in a shocking betrayal, Kobai strikes Kusuk from behind, wrapping a garrote around his neck and sneering not to worry, as he won't kill him. Kusuk's world goes dark as he's dragged away. Later, Sylphie and the others find the vacant lot filled with Kusuk's materials, including precious mithril tools. They realize something terrible has happened, especially since Kobai, his guard, is also missing. The grim truth dawns on them: Kobai must be the culprit, a double agent pretending to be on their side. Kusuk is shown unconscious and bound in the back of a speeding carriage. Sylphie immediately begins organizing her forces to secure Kusuk's abandoned supplies. They review Kobai's history, noting he joined them 3.5 years ago and was known for being an enigmatic but effective warrior, particularly popular with the children. The betrayal makes no sense, but a scout soon confirms Kobai left the city in a carriage through the western gate, using forged orders stamped with an official seal to trick the guards. Realizing they've been completely outplayed, Sylphie orders an immediate pursuit, determined to get Kusuk back. Deep in a forest, Kobai delivers the bound Kusuk to a group of mysterious hooded figures. Kusuk struggles against his bonds, his muffled cries ignored, before he's put to sleep with a flash of magic. Kobai tells the figures not to kill Kusuk as his fate depends on his behavior, and with his contract fulfilled, he calmly walks away. By the time Sylphie's scouts find the abandoned carriage, it's too late. They discover tracks from multiple people and the remnants of a teleportation circle. Realizing a direct pursuit is now impossible, Sylphie slams her fist down in fury, calling off the chase and heading back to base. A cold, menacing rage settles over her as she thinks of Kusuk. Ira, sensing Sylphie's despair, declares with terrifying intensity that she will find them and make them pay, and Sylphie, in a moment of desperation, agrees that Ira has the strongest bond with him and can do whatever it takes, a promise she immediately seems to regret. Kusuk finally awakens, groggy and disoriented, to find himself alone in a dark, unfamiliar prison cell. Kusuk, the new guy, wakes up alone in a damp prison cell, calling out to see if anyone else is there. The silence is his only answer, a disappointing realization since he hoped to gather information from other prisoners. He clenches his shackled fist, a cold fury simmering as he remembers his captor, a fox-like demi-human named Kobai, vowing to kill him no matter what. Looking around, he recognizes the architecture from forts he'd seen before, concluding he must be somewhere in the Holy Kingdom. This dungeon feels familiar, placing him in Marinard, a territory controlled by the Holy Kingdom. But why was he just left here? Kobai had stripped him of his materials and food, yet left him alive. Kusuk realizes his restraints are practically meaningless against his store ability, which he can access through the handcuffs themselves. He figures Kobai must have another objective. If killing him was the goal, it would have been done already. He speculates that both Kobai and the Holy Kingdom are pawns in a larger game, but it's all just guesswork for now. Deciding to act rather than wait, Kusuk gets ready to make his move. He accesses his inventory and uses some wooden planks and pebbles to craft a basic stone knife and axe. With his new tool, he easily breaks down the wooden bed for more raw materials. His eyes land on the toilet, a simple drain pipe leading into the sewers. It's a disgusting but perfect escape route. He gets to digging, prying the stones away and sealing the entrance behind him before disappearing into the darkness. He emerges into what he assumes are the sewers, his path lit by a crafted torch. But the passage is surprisingly clean, not at all what he expected. This must be some kind of secret underground passage running even deeper than the sewers. As he walks, he feels a crawling presence behind him, a sixth sense screaming that he's not alone. He turns to face an amorphous, horrifying creature covered in eyeballs. Panicked, he scrambles through his inventory for something to fight it with, but as the monster gets closer, an idea strikes him. He tosses a piece of gizmo meat on the ground as bait. The creature hesitates, inspecting the meat with its tentacles before slurping it up, seemingly enjoying the taste. But as Kusuk raises his axe, the creature suddenly speaks, letting out a terrified shriek. It asks if he's a meanie, wondering if he's going to hurt it because it's a demi-human. Kusuk, stunned, explains he's not an enemy and has friends who are demi-humans himself, mentioning he's currently escaping from the Holy Kingdom. The slime, smelling the scent of his friends on him, tentatively allows him to touch it. Kusuk learns the slime's name is Lime and that it has more friends nearby. Excited to find potential allies, he follows Lime deeper into the tunnels. Lime happily lists its friends, a big lime, Bess, and a big Poizo. Kusuk realizes they must be walking underneath the royal castle itself, meaning he was transported all the way to Marinesburg. This is huge news. The king and the Maynard royal family should be here, meaning he might find clues about Sylphie. Soon a bright light appears ahead. Lime announces they've arrived, and a welcoming voice greets them with a magic light. Before Kusuk can react, a massive slime rushes forward, confirming that he is indeed a human. To his utter shock, the slimes transform, revealing themselves to be slime girls. Staring in disbelief, Kusuk mutters that he never thought such beings could actually exist. As he stands bewildered, the smaller slime reforms and introduces itself as Lime 2. A larger slime girl explains that she is Beth and that she and Lime are the same being. Another introduces herself as Poizo, clarifying that they can split their bodies to create a complex. Kusuk introduces himself as an ally of Princess Sylphie, but he's quickly overwhelmed as the slimes press in close, their sticky bodies clinging to him. He makes his way down a busy road, glad he avoided the goblin slime had warned him about. In the distance, he's stunned by the magnificent view of Erichburg and its towering castle. He approaches the bustling city gates and introduces himself to the guards as Ku, a mercenary looking for a job. After paying a hefty 1 silver entry fee for a week-long visitor's pass, he is finally allowed inside. The city is even more bustling than he imagined, and his first priority is finding an inn. A young boy offers to be his guide for a few coins, and Kusuk agrees, tossing him a coin. The boy leads him to Raffin's inn, where Kusuk books a room for 3 nights, and asks the innkeeper for directions to a currency exchange. On the way, he grabs some street food but finds it disappointingly bland. At the exchange, the shopkeeper is surprised by the large amount of imperial currency Kusuk presents. Kusuk coolly explains its loot from the eastern battlefields, secretly confident in the high-quality replicas Bess created for him. The exchange is a success, leaving him with a small fortune. He then asks about Mithril, but the merchant confirms it's nearly impossible to find since trade with the Black Elves ceased. However, the crafty old man has a suggestion: donate 2 large gold coins to the church and they will give him a mithril rosary as a token of faith. He even gives Kusuk the perfect script to use. With a new plan in mind, Kusuk heads back and his guide informs him the saintess is in town for a sermon tomorrow. The next day, Kusuk finds himself standing before the awe-inspiring cathedral. Inside, the air is thick with the prayers of the faithful, and Kusuk feels a little out of place as he gets in line to meet the saintess, with no idea what he'll even say. As he steps forward, his turn finally arriving, a man behind him suddenly screams and lunges at the saintess with a blade. Kusuk reacts on pure instinct, shoving her out of harm's way, and taking a punch from the crazed attacker. But in the ensuing chaos, a sharp pain blossoms in his side. He's been stabbed. He collapses, the world fading around him as he wonders if this is how his adventure ends. He wakes slowly, confused by the unfamiliar ceiling. He sits up to find the saintess herself sitting right beside his bed. She gazes at him intently, asking if he is a god or an apostle. Kusuk is completely lost. She chides his disrespect, introducing herself as the chosen saintess of the Adal faith. He remembers the attack clearly, the crazed man, the fight, getting stabbed. The saintess explains that the blade was coated in basilisk venom and that she performed a miracle to heal and detoxify him. She declares that he owes her a great debt for saving his life, but he cheekily retorts that he thought all lives were equal to her god. She ignores his sarcasm and gets back to the point, insisting she can see a powerful divine radiance around him. She explains that when he was dying, she prayed for a miracle and her god allowed him to live. That's not all. For the last 3 days, the nuns have been cleansing his unconscious body to prevent infection. A horrifying realization dawns on Kusuk as she specifies they cleaned every single orifice. For the first time, a teasing smile spreads across her face as she calls him a pervert. Mortified, Kusuk tries to flee, but she pins him to the bed with surprising strength, warning him that the basilisk venom is still latent in his body. If he leaves the cathedral's protection, he will die a slow, agonizing death. He's trapped. Resigned, he agrees to stay, but she leans in closer, once again demanding to know who or what he is. He feigns dizziness from the poison to make her leave, and she reluctantly agrees, promising to get her answers later. Alone at last, Kusuk checks his status, confirming the chronic deadly poison is slowly killing him. With only a few days before his friends return, he knows he has to find a way to administer his own craftable antidote and escape this holy prison. Kusuk wakes from his feverish state only to be mortified by a nun cheerfully cleaning up his sick mess, a task he finds deeply embarrassing. She introduces herself as Amelie and dismisses his protests with a gentle but unyielding smile, explaining it's her solemn duty entrusted to her by the Lady Saintess herself. Her devotion extends to bringing him a meal, a bland and unappetizing gruel she claims is for his delicate stomach. And she even insists on feeding him herself. Just as he's about to endure another spoonful, the very same Saintess enters the room. She gets straight to the point, reminding Kusuk that he saw her as a shining, godlike being. She explains this divine radiance is like currency, with most people shining like copper, while she herself is on a completely different level, a platinum coin of divine energy. Kusuk, however, remains skeptical, brushing it off as a mere hallucination born from his exhaustion. To prove her point, she produces a sacred relic, the Crown of Radiance, an artifact that makes divine energy visible to the naked eye. The moment she places it on her head, Kusuk is blasted by an impossibly bright light, crying out that his eyes are burning. The Saintess then places the crown on Amelie, and the resulting light is merely a soft glow, which Kusuk learns is terrifying for those with weak faith to witness. With the demonstration complete, she announces it's his turn, intending to prove his own immense radiance. Panic sets in as Kusuk resists, but the nuns easily hold him down, forcing the crown onto his head as he screams in protest. A colossal flash of light erupts from him, so powerful it illuminates the entire building from the outside. The Saintess is left breathless, admitting he's even more incredible than she imagined. Now certain of his identity, she demands the truth, but Kusuk cautiously asks what would happen if he were this apostle she claims him to be. Her plan is as shocking as it is direct. He would dedicate himself to prayer, and eventually they would be married and bear a child together. Stunned, Kusuk protests that he already loves someone else. But the Saintess calmly declares that it doesn't matter, for she received a divine revelation that he is her destiny. She recounts a vision from God, a prophecy that foretold their meeting and their shared future, aligning perfectly with the events of his arrival. Kusuk is lost in thought, reflecting on how he was ripped from his world and dropped into this one. Realizing that if fate had brought them together sooner, he never would have met Sylphie and the others who became his family. Apologizing for her intensity, the Saintess introduces herself as Eleonora, or Elen, and agrees to give him time to process, eagerly offering to be the one he confides in. As she leaves, Kusuk is left a blushing mess. Later, Amelie casually informs him that Adolism doesn't forbid a man from having multiple wives, revealing their god Adol himself had many partners. Kusuk finds this revelation bizarre but pushes it aside, focusing on the immediate crisis. That night, alone with his thoughts, he drinks an antidote to the poison racking his body, and contemplates his impossible situation. He is torn between the good people of the Holy Kingdom and his loyalty to Sylphie and the demi-humans fighting to reclaim their stolen homeland. He knows the path to coexistence is long and fraught with deep-seated prejudice. A plan begins to form in his mind. He can use Elen's belief that he's an apostle radiating platinum tier light. He could work with her to start a new denomination of Adolism, one that rejects the hatred of demi-humans. But the risk is terrifying. It would mean open war with the Holy Kingdom. He clenches his fist, determined, but then recoils, admitting to himself he isn't ready to die. He knows he can't do it alone. He needs Elen. The next day, he asks to speak with her privately. He comes clean, admitting he is not an apostle of God, but a fabled visitor from another world. A world without magic or demi-humans. To prove it, he materializes a plate of pancakes from his inventory, a sweet treat that instantly delights her. He explains his power is a limitless storage ability, which only solidifies her belief. Ancient tales say such visitors were brought here by God's will, confirming to her that he is her destiny. Finally, he tells her his name, Kusuk. He then lays out his radical proposal, revealing he is a member of the Liberation Army and has no intention of betraying them. He suggests the true traitors are the corrupt leaders of the Holy Kingdom. He declares his intent to bring them down and asks Elen to join him to build a new faith and minimize the bloodshed. Elen is so shocked she drops her cup. He presses on, confessing that he's terrified and needs her, that he can't do it without her. It's a selfish plea to protect himself from a tragic end, and he doesn't hide it. Moved and intrigued, she promises to think it over. When she returns, her mind is made up, but she has one final, critical question. Will he make her the most important woman in his life? Kusuk is brutally honest, he can't. Sylphie will always be his number one. He asks if being a mistress is an option. Elen then asks if he would save Sylphie over her in a life-or-death situation, and he confirms it without hesitation. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, Elen accepts this, declaring that she will find happiness by his side regardless and will give her life for his without regret. This is the resolve he needs to challenge an entire faith. She then reveals that her sect already suspects the holy doctrines were altered centuries ago to incite prejudice against demi-humans. Confirming Kusuk's wild guess, he feigns ignorance about the historical events that led to it, narrowly avoiding Alen's truth-seeing eyes. But he knows the full, bloody story. With their alliance forged, they spend the rest of the day plotting the revolution that will shake the very foundations of their world. Kusuk awakens in the unfamiliar sterile room of a cathedral, a nun informing him that he has, by some miracle, fully recovered from the basilisk poison. Feeling a surge of relief, he confirms he's well enough to leave, stretching his limbs with newfound vigor. The nuns have already retrieved his belongings from the inn, and after changing into his familiar gear, he comes face to face with the saintess herself. She's glad to have caught him before he could slip away, and after dismissing her attendants, she gets straight to the point, asking if he still wants the rosary. Kusuk's mind races. He desperately needs the rosary, a disguised golem communication device, but he can't possibly explain why. He manages to stammer out a yes, and she offers it to him in exchange for 2 large gold coins, a price he readily pays. The saintess isn't done, however, handing him a sealed letter of appointment that grants him a direct audience with her anytime, a gift that leaves him genuinely stunned with gratitude. Wanting to return the favor, he crafts a unique bullet pendant with his name engraved on it, explaining it can serve as an emergency ID. As he leans in to place it around her neck, she suddenly wraps her arms around him in a desperate embrace, her voice trembling as she asks if he's truly leaving her behind. Before he can answer, she pulls him into a deep, possessive kiss that leaves him breathless. Stunned, he remarks that this was his first bittersweet, poisoned kiss, and she makes him promise to return. He devises a plan for future contact, telling her about the friendly slimes in the castle basement who will act as messengers, assuring her they are harmless. They seal their pact with a handshake, agreeing to work towards a peace summit to end the war. With their business concluded, Kusuk departs the cathedral, his mind set on his next objective, regrouping with the slimes. But as he navigates the city's alleyways, an explosion rocks the street behind him. In an instant, a hooded figure has him in a chokehold, a blade pressed against his throat, and he curses his own carelessness. The assailant is impossibly strong, and just as he braces for the end, a familiar voice whispers his name. He looks down in shock to see the face of his companion, Melty. Relief washes over him as she releases him, pulling him into a tight hug, overjoyed that he's safe. He's moved that she came all this way for him, but then he notices her eyes are glowing gold. She explains it's a battle trait, a physical manifestation of her intense emotions. The touching reunion is cut short by a third voice, dripping with sarcasm, remarking on their friendly display from the shadows. This encounter was no accident. A flashback reveals Melty in the Liberation Army's war room 14 days prior. With sending an army deemed suicide, a small infiltration team was their only hope. After Sylphie and the others were dismissed as too recognizable, Melty made a shocking proposal. She would go alone, and to blend in, she would cut off her own horns. She argued that her own life was more expendable than the leaders of the rebellion, a grim calculus that ultimately won them over. Back in the present, Kusuk is horrified to learn the truth. He asks if her horns will grow back, but she confirms they won't, explaining that for her people, it's a permanent, shameful scar. He can't fathom why she'd make such a sacrifice, and she tells him simply that he is irreplaceable, not just to the army, but to everyone waiting for him. Feeling the immense weight of her devotion, Kusuk promises he won't let her sacrifice be in vain. After a wild night that got them both fired up, Kusuk and his companion Melty depart from a friendly inn, waving goodbye to the kind owners. As they walk through the quiet town, Kusuk apologizes for his excitement but reassures her that thanks to his crafting ability, his armor is already good as new. He can't help but notice Melty's subdued mood, a stark contrast to the calm and composed woman he's used to. He realizes that losing her horns, the very source of a horned one's confidence, must have been an agonizing blow to her mental balance. In a moment of genuine concern, he pats her back, telling her she doesn't need to be perfect around him. A warm blush spreads across her face as she quietly thanks him for his kindness. Getting back to business, Kusuk asks what their next move is, and Melty promptly lays out a plan to follow the main road before cutting into the mountains. Their journey is immediately interrupted by the screeching of goblins echoing through the trees. Melty senses there are only 3 of them, but as Kusuk prepares his crossbow, she steps forward, insisting that she will handle this nuisance herself. With a single, dismissive gesture, she unleashes 3 blasts of dark energy that completely obliterate the goblins in an instant, leaving Kusuk utterly stunned by the display of power. He demands to know what that attack was, but she just smiles mysteriously, calling it a secret. Now intensely curious, he asks her just how strong she really is. Melty nonchalantly claims that if she went all out, she'd be slightly stronger than Sylphie. She explains that in a pure magic duel, Aura might have an edge with her versatility, but she doubts even Sir Leonard and Madame Zamaru could defeat her if they teamed up. The truth finally comes out. She was once an overlord, serving as an internal affairs officer. She reveals she is a changeling, born to ordinary sheep demi-human parents but possessing the dormant, powerful blood of an ancient ancestor, granting her immense strength and magic from birth. Her unique abilities led the kingdom to secretly assign her to the royal family, a secret that is now exposed. Stunned, Kusuk blurts out a question about her age, which earns him a playful scolding. He clarifies he's just curious about overlord lifespans, and she explains they live about 5 times longer than common races, making her younger than Leonard but older than Sylphie. Suddenly, a massive shadow falls over them. Melty tackles Kusuk to the ground just as a colossal beast swoops down from the sky. It's a wyvern, and Kusuk is furious that she failed to mention its feeding grounds were on their route. As the beast dives for him again, Melty casually tells him to dodge, offering words of encouragement as if he were in no real danger. Left with no choice, Kusuk whips out his assault rifle and unleashes a torrent of bullets into the wyvern's face. The creature shrieks and crashes to the ground dead. Melty remarks that for a non-combatant, he possesses some dangerously effective skills. But Kusuk deflects, claiming he just uses non-combat weapons and his main skills are crafting and carrying things. High on his victory, he suggests they make camp, eager to fight whatever monster comes next. His bravado lasts all of 5 seconds. The ground begins to shake violently as a new, even more terrifying armored dragon bursts from the rocks. Kusuk panics, certain his rifle won't even scratch this monster's scales. He asks Melty if she can take it down if he can just pin its wings. With a determined look, he pulls out what he calls a magic staff, a rocket launcher. He fires, expecting a massive explosion, but the monster just stands there completely unharmed. Kusuk is baffled until he notices the dragon isn't attacking, it's shaking in fear. Melty reveals that dragons are intelligent enough to understand human language, and to prove it, she asks the creature to raise its right hand, which it immediately does. It seems Kusuk has developed a new skill, the ability to communicate with the native creatures of this world. He decides to test it, asking if the dragon can understand him. The dragon roars back, insulted by his foul breath and audacity. Realizing this dragon is not so friendly after all, Kusuk immediately hides behind Melty, trying to use her status as a scary overlord to save his skin. His next plan, however, is far more effective: bribery with food. Soon, the two are sharing a pile of hamburgers with the very dragon that terrified them moments ago. Kusuk offers it some elven mead, which the creature finds heavenly. The dragon, thoroughly impressed, asks how a mere human can create such delicious food. Seizing his chance, Kusuk smugly explains he's the only one who can make them and asks if the dragon would like to eat them every day. The dragon roars its enthusiastic approval, and just like that, it's recruited, proudly declaring it will lead the way. Kusuk grins, declaring the dragon tamed. While Melty has a very bad feeling about his methods, Kusuk quickly crafts a saddle, names his new mount Grand, and prepares for their unprecedented flight. After helping Melty aboard, he gives the command, and with a powerful thrust of its wings, Grand takes to the sky. Kusuk is left breathless, staring in awe at the incredible view as they float above the mountains.